These two words concluded the intense duel, and gave a conclusion that was completely unexpected by everyone present. The Sword Emperor had indeed lost. It was obvious that the Sword Emperor was far inferior to Ling Tian, just based on the 30 moves that Ling Tian had earlier dodged. Afterwards, a single strike from Ling Tian had sent the Sword Emperor's sword flying, and another could have immediately taken the Sword Emperor's life. Although Ling Tian's Zephyr Blade did not touch the Sword Emperor, everyone knew that with the 10,000 plus damage he had earlier dealt to the Flame Emperor, the Sword Emperor would have been instantly killed. The moment Ling Tian swept the Sword Emperor's sword flying and stopped his Zephyr Blade in front of the Sword Emperor's chest, all the spectators stopped breathing and stared dumbfounded. The players who were close to the action were unceasingly taking photos of this scene that would shake the entirety of China. The legend of the Sword Emperor had been shattered. This Ling Tian, who had previously been unheard of, and had monopolized all of the top rankings, had defeated the number 1 player on the Heaven rankings, the invincible Sword Emperor. Annihilating the Flame Emperor, defeating the Sword Emperor, Ling Tian had consecutively defeated the 2 strongest players in the Yan-Huang alliance. At this moment, Ling Tian's fame had skyrocketed. Even the incredibly famous and reputable Yan-Huang alliance had become his stepping stone to fame and glory. He won. He won. Within Heart's Dream's small house, Shao Qi yelled out joyously, and excitedly hugged Su'er beside her. They jumped up and down cheerfully like a pair of rabbits. Her big brother Ling Tian had really defeated the almighty Sword Emperor. Such a strong person was actually their guildmate, someone who trained with them and gave them many precious equipment. For him to achieve such an accomplishment, it gave them a feeling of boundless pride and joy. Shui Rua cupped her cheeks in her hands, her smile like that of a pure and unblemished doll. Yunmeng Xian's mouth contained a trace of a smile, and her gaze was completely dumbfounded. Mu Bingyao's expression grew warmer, and her mouth drew upwards into a smile, gazing at this man who everyone had their attention on. This sort of attention, glory, and fame was something that he had always deserved. Ling Chen withdrew the Zephyr Blade from against the Sword Emperor's chest. Under his mask, no one could see what sort of expression he had, and what sort of emotions were held in his eyes. He desperately wanted to softly ask, "Is it you?" However, looking at the Sword Emperor standing right in front of him, his lips trembled, and he was not able to make a sound. Within his field of vision, the Sword Emperor silently turned around. The fury and killing intent that had been radiating out from her immediately disappeared. She walked forward for about 3 steps, and flicked her wrist, sending a small token flying out towards Long Tian Yun, which he caught. Guild Creation Token. She didn't give it directly to Ling Tian, but rather gave it to Long Tian Yun. Afterwards, she disappeared. Perhaps she returned to town, or maybe she had logged off. The Flame Emperor had died, and the Sword Emperor had been defeated. Neither of Long Tian Yun's guardians were by his side. This time, even with the entire Yan-Huang alliance behind him, Long Tian Yun had been completely upstaged by Ling Tian. As the Sword Emperor departed, the plains region erupted into shouting and cheering. Ling Tian! Ling Tian! Ling Tian! Ling Tian! Ling Tian! The Sword Emperor lost. Ling Tian is number 1 on the Heaven rankings now. I was expecting to see the Sword Emperor dominate Ling Tian. I never thought such an inexplicable thing would happen. Ling Tian so strong. He beat both the Flame Emperor and the Sword Emperor. Hey, do you guys think Ling Tian, who beat the Sword Emperor like that, could fight on par with Eve? It's very possible. If our China region has a player who can fight against Eve, we won't be laughed at by those Western players anymore. Ling Tian! Ling Tian! Ling Tian! Ling Tian! The plains region was inundated by shouts of Ling Tian, which caused one's ears to ache. The strong were always worshipped and admired by all. Yesterday, when he had challenged the Sword Emperor, he had been ridiculed. The moment he had defeated the Sword Emperor, those mocking laughs had turned into cheers of admiration. This result had been completely unforeseen by everyone, including the Yan-Huang alliance. No matter how hard he tried, Long Tianyun could not suppress the dark look on his face as he tightly gripped the guild creation token. He had spent a gigantic fortune in order to purchase it, in order to set alight the fire of the Yan-Huang alliance's glory. However, what he had been met with was unimaginable humiliation. The token had gone from being the first to second, and had even been rendered unusable. Now, the Sword Emperor had lost and the guild creation token was going to given to Ling Tian. Even if Long Tianyun wanted to go back on his promise, this was impossible, as he had made the bet with Ling Tian in front of the whole world. Anyone could imagine how furious and humiliated he felt. What a spectacular outcome. Hearing the unceasing shouting and cheering, Yun Feng secretly smiled, and said to himself, "But I just don't understand why he challenged the Sword Emperor, and set the guild creation token as stakes. Come to think of it, what is his background? Why does he seem to have such deep enmity with Long Tianyun? It even seems to be incredibly grievous, absolutely irreconcilable. What an exciting outcome," Against the Sky said with a laugh. "I bet the misfortunes he's suffered in these past 2 days have been the biggest he's ever experienced in his whole life. Haha. Indeed. It seems that we need to do some research on this person's background. However, something seems a bit off." Skyfall tapped on his chin, looking at the unmoving Ling Tian. Before, he was extremely arrogant, even towards the Yan-Huang alliance. Although he definitely could have easily killed the Sword Emperor, he chose not to, and he clearly won, but now he's so silent, completely different to before. Perhaps because he doesn't want to push the Yan-Huang alliance too far. After all, the Yan-Huang alliance is still quite powerful. Even if he was 10 times as powerful, if he made an enemy of the Yan-Huang alliance, he would still be finished. Against the Sky replied. Skyfall shook his head. "No, he's already made an enemy of the Yan-Huang alliance. Now, he has 2 choices: he could join the Yan-Huang alliance, and Long Tianyun would welcome him with open arms. Otherwise, be destroyed by the Yan-Huang alliance." Against the Sky finished his sentence. Without enough power, this is the only result. If he doesn't choose to join the Yan-Huang alliance, our Skyfall dynasty would be the best place to go. Alliance Master Long. At this time, Ling Tian, who had kept silent, finally spoke. As soon as he started to speak, everyone began to quieten down. No one could possibly forget the stakes of the bet Ling Tian and Long Tianyun had made. He walked towards Long Tianyun, stopped about 10 steps away, and stretched out his hand. "Your Yan-Huang alliance's Sword Emperor has lost. According to our bet, the guild creation token belongs to me." Being someone who had been respected and admired since he was young, being spoken to in such a way as the loser of the bet was something that would normally never happen in Long Tianyun's life, nor would they ordinarily dare to speak to him like this. However, this was exactly the current reality. As such, he elegantly smiled. The smile did not seem forced at all. "To be honest, this result was out of my expectations, because I understand how powerful the Sword Emperor is, and have absolute faith in the Sword Emperor's power." Long Tianyun casually said, "I was very shocked that the Sword Emperor lost, but I'm also feeling very excited. This is because this means that a player that can defeat the Sword Emperor has appeared in China. This is an extremely joyous occasion for all of China. Our China's strength has once again significantly increased. In the next international mock battle, if Ling Tian can represent China, our country will definitely achieve great results." "Yeah. Well said." Within the crowd, there were many shouts of agreement. Long Tianyun did not stop, and passed the guild creation token to Flame Shadow beside him. "Compared to what I just talked about, this guild creation token is a small matter. Ling Tian, since you've won, our Yan-Huang alliance will definitely keep its word and give the guild creation token to you." As he said this, he nodded towards Flame Shadow, who presented the guild creation token to Ling Chen. Long Tian Yun's ability to control the situation and twist it to his favor is quite outstanding. Against the sky said as he coldly laughed. Although he's young, he's definitely much harder to deal with than those much older than him. It's true that there are no ordinary people in the Long family. Skyfall said. Ling Tian took the guild creation token and put it away. This guild creation token that had costed the Yan Huang Alliance 1 billion gold now belonged to Ling Tian. So that matter's now over. Although we lost a small guild creation token, we received a joyful surprise, so I'd say it's worth it. Long Tian Yun said smilingly. No one could see any fury or resentment in his expression. He took 2 steps forwards, and said while looking at Ling Chen in the eyes, "Brother Ling Tian, right now I, Long Tian Yun, have a favor to ask of you. I would like you to invite you to join our Yan Huang Alliance. I guarantee on my surname, Long, that you will never regret your decision if you decide to join us. I would like you to invite you to join our Yan Huang Alliance. I guarantee on my surname, Long, that you will never regret your decision if you decide to join us." Boom! The plains region once again erupted into roaring and shouting. After the intense battle, Long Tian Yun had personally invited Ling Tian to join the Yan Huang Alliance in public. This caused everyone to feel incredibly shocked. Every great power would want to have a player that could defeat the Sword Emperor, including the Yan Huang Alliance. If Ling Tian joined the Yan Huang Alliance, they would have Ling Tian, the Sword Emperor and the Flame Emperor. It would be like giving wings to a tiger, and they would become absolutely invincible. At the same time, they wouldn't have really lost the guild creation token, and the shamefulness of the Yan Huang Alliance's Sword Emperor losing to Ling Tian would also disappear, because it would have just been a duel between 2 parties in the Yan Huang Alliance. Based on his performance in the duel, if Ling Tian decided to join the Yan Huang Alliance, he would receive the highest treatment. His position would only be inferior to that of Long Tian Yun's, and so would his fame. He would probably have millions of people under his command. Long Tian Yun even promised that he would never regret his decision, and staked this on his name. This was simply an irresistible offer. After all, on the other hand, if he publicly refused, he would once again damage Long Tian Yun's already shattered pride and dignity. His reward would be the hatred and fury of Long Tian Yun and the entire Yan Huang Alliance. Everyone knew what would be the outcome. With the strength of the Yan Huang Alliance, even if Ling Tian was incredibly powerful, he was still an ant. As such, to all the spectators, accepting or rejecting was the difference between heaven and hell. Everyone's attention was once again focused upon Ling Tian, waiting for his answer. If he chose to accept, the Yan Huang Alliance would gain another super expert, and everything that had happened on this day would go from negatively affecting the Yan Huang Alliance to greatly benefiting them. If he refused, he would still be the number 1 on the heaven rankings, but his life in the Yan Huang Alliance would become much more difficult. It was even possible that the Yan Huang Alliance would come after him to kill him. Ling Tian remained silent for a long time. No one could see his expression, but it seemed that he was staring at Long Tian Yun, seriously considering the benefits and costs. Long Tian Yun's mouth grew wider as he spoke again. "Ling Tian, from your past actions, it seems that you're someone who treasures freedom, and doesn't like anyone or anything imposing on your freedom. This I can completely understand. With your power, you probably wouldn't be willing to be under anyone either. You can rest assured that if you join the Yan Huang Alliance, you can still maintain your freedom, you can go wherever you want, do what you want to do, and will not be accountable to anyone. Instead, you can use the Yan Huang Alliance's power whenever you want. All that will be required of you will be to appear when the Yan Huang Alliance needs you." If he joined the Yan Huang Alliance, not only would he keep his freedom, but would be able to use the Yan Huang Alliance's power whenever he wanted. This was an unimaginably good deal. Even the Sword Emperor and Flame Emperor were not treated in such a way. Many players' hearts began to thump loudly. Who could resist a deal like this? Would the Yan Huang Alliance once again gain a super expert? In the Azure Dragon City, within the small house occupied by Heart's Dream, the girls all began to look worried. The alliance master of one of the largest guilds in the world was personally inviting Ling Tian in public with such irresistible conditions. They couldn't help but be anxious that Ling Tian would really join the Yan Huang Alliance. After all, if he joined the Yan Huang Alliance, he would instantly become someone in charge of countless people. However, if he stayed in Heart's Dream, he would receive little to no benefits from this guild that no one had even heard of. No way, Big Brother Ling Tian definitely wouldn't betray us. He'll definitely refuse. Shao Qi's hands were tightly clasped together, staring at the silent Ling Tian on the screen. His silence meant that there was still a possibility of him accepting. The longer he stayed silent, the faster her heart thumped. Big sister Qi, don't worry, Big Brother will definitely refuse. Ling Shui Rua smilingly said as she pulled on Shao Qi's sleeves. I also believe that he'll definitely refuse. Yunmeng Xian said. However, a flash of worry appeared on her face. If he publicly refused, Long Tian Yun's pride would once again take another blow, and he would hate Ling Tian even more. At that time, what could he do? It was the Yan Huang Alliance that he was facing. God damn. With these sorts of conditions, even I want to join. Against the Sky frowned, and his face darkened. If Ling Tian really joined the Yan Huang Alliance, it would be terrible for us. Ling Tian can no longer be considered as simply a person. With his incredible fame and attraction, if he joins the Yan Huang Alliance, we will never be able to fight with them ever again. Skyfall replied. At this moment, the silent Ling Tian began to speak. Ha! A very casual laugh came out of his mouth. No one could tell that behind the mask, within those eyes was a look of wrath and hatred. Originally, he did not intend to fully become enemies with the Yan Huang Alliance. His goal was to simply anger Long Tian Yun and make him lose some face. It wasn't yet time for him to completely go against the Yan Huang Alliance. However, that name, Heaven's Edge, Butterfly's Dance, and the silent Sword Emperor wrapped tightly in her cloak, caused boundless hatred to flow out from within him. His silence earlier was not in contemplation, but rather in an attempt to control his emotions. In the end, he still failed. The result of his failure was the uncontrollable release of his emotions. He laughed sinisterly. Long Tian Yun, the conditions you gave were pretty good. If you asked earlier, I might have really agreed. However, this word caused Long Tian Yun's face to stiffen, and caused every player to hold their breath. Because this word meant that Ling Tian had refused. There's someone else who gave me equally good conditions in exchange for me defeating the Sword Emperor and taking away your guild creation token. Whoosh! As soon as Ling Tian said this sentence, the players began to clamor and shout, and Long Tian Yun's face darkened. From his words, it seemed that Ling Tian was being instructed by someone. The next sentence that came out of his mouth caused everyone to be greatly shocked. At the same time, I was also instructed to take your life. As soon as he finished speaking, the Zephyr Blade and Great Ravager appeared in his hand. Like a bolt of lightning, he charged towards Long Tian Yun, who was about 10 steps away. Ah! Within Heart's Dream small room, the girls let out a cry of dismay. He actually wanted to kill Long Tian Yun. He wanted to kill the man with the most influence in the entire virtual world. Holy crap! Is he crazy? Yunfeng's eyes widened as he shouted out loud. Compared to when he had defeated the Sword Emperor, this scene was much more unbelievable to the spectators. Ling Tian actually wanted to kill Long Tian Yun, the one person no one would even dare to anger. Protect the Alliance Master. Stop him. However, Ling Chen's rage exploded, and he let out his full strength. This shield formation that could only stop normal players, how could it block him? Piss off! He yelled as a Ling Tian burst flew out from the great Ravager in his right hand, and 5 shield bearers were sent flying. This caused a large gap to appear in the shield formation. Through this gap, he saw the glow of a scroll, and Long Tianyun subsequently disappeared. Ling Chen frowned. He was about 10 steps away from Long Tianyun, and his attacks were enough to force Long Tianyun into combat mode. This meant that he would not have been able to use a teleport scroll that allowed him to return to town. Thus, what he used was probably a scroll that could allow him to teleport somewhere not too far away while in combat mode. Immediately after, a flash of light shone out, and Long Tianyun appeared 20 meters away within a group of players. So it was a scroll that allowed him to short-range teleport while in combat mode. It wasn't too strange that Long Tianyun had such an item. After all, the Yan-Huang alliance was quite large and had abundant resources. From when Ling Chen had attacked, to the formation of the shield formation then Long Tianyun teleporting, only a few seconds had passed. Most players had only just realized what was happening, and began to shout and yell in disbelief. Countless players charged out from the gigantic crowd towards Ling Chen. These were all members of the Yan-Huang alliance who were hiding within the crowd. Seeing that Ling Tian wanted to kill their alliance master, they couldn't stand by and do nothing. The Yan-Huang alliance has all come out, it's impossible for Ling Tian to kill Long Tianyun. Immediately order people to help Ling Tian escape, but don't let the Yan-Huang alliance know it was us. In public, we still have to maintain good relations with them. In future, we'll reveal this favor to Ling Tian, which will benefit us greatly. Within the chaos, Skyfall quickly said to Against the Sky, who immediately nodded. Ling Chen's attack towards Long Tianyun was like the flame that sparked a massive explosion. Countless members of the Yan-Huang alliance flooded out, surrounding him. Countless shields, spears, swords, axes surrounded him, and countless elemental attacks and arrows were all locked onto him. In just a moment, he had been completely surrounded by hundreds of people. Ling Chen ignored everything around him, and his hate-filled gaze was directed at Long Tianyun, who was about 20 meters away. Seeing as I want to kill you, not even God can keep you alive today. Ling Chen was not fazed at all by the encirclement, and did not have any plans of retreat. Instead, this caused him to become even more furious. He charged towards where Long Tianyun was, and waved both hands outwards. Whoosh! Bang! 2 Ling Tian bursts came out of his weapons, and instantly annihilated all the players around him. At this moment, countless arrows and elemental attacks flew at him from all directions. No matter where he went, he would definitely be hit. Ling Chen continued to press forward, as if he didn't see the attacks, then jumped up. He activated Moon Shadow, and froze everything around him. A white light flashed and the soaring cloud spear replaced the Zephyr blade in his left hand. The distance between Long Tianyun and himself was now only around 15 meters. However, there were numerous shield bearers gathered around Long Tianyun, forming an impenetrable wall. With circles upon circles of shield bearers surrounding him, it was almost impossible to even get near. Ling Chen coldly laughed, and threw the spear towards Long Tianyun. The soaring cloud spear shot out from his hand like a silver meteor. Bang! 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, 13, 16, 21. The silver meteor pierced through 21 shield bearers and their shields, and then finally pierced through Long Tianyun's chest, nailing him to the ground. Ling Chen's lips curved upwards. He had finally been able to release some of the anger stored up within him. If I want you dead before dawn, no one can keep you alive to see the sun rise. To be able to freeze everything around him, if he used this skill against the Sword Emperor, then it would have only taken 1 second to defeat the Sword Emperor. Ling Chen moved towards Long Tianyun in the last seconds of the effect of Moon Shadow, moving past the attacks that were locked onto him and the players that were about to attack him. In the last second, he stood in front of Long Tianyun, stretched out his hand and retrieved the soaring cloud spear. "How can I let my soaring cloud fall into your hands?" Ling Chen derisively said as he looked at Long Tianyun. At this moment, the effects of Moon Shadow expired. A gigantic damaged figure rose up above Long Tianyun, whose eyes widened. Under the gaze of countless players, he fell to the ground. Long Tianyun, the highest authority in the Yan-Huang alliance, which had the greatest fame and reputation in China, had been killed by a single Ling Chen despite being surrounded by countless Yan-Huang alliance guild members. This was the first time Long Tianyun had ever died in the virtual world. This death meant that from this day onwards, he would be lifelong enemies with Ling Tian. The Alliance Master. The Alliance Master died. The Alliance Master was killed. Kill. Immediately kill Ling Tian. The players quickly fell into confusion, and all members of the Yan-Huang alliance were completely furious. Ling Tian had annihilated the Flame Emperor, defeated the Sword Emperor, and killed Long Tianyun despite the fact that he was so heavily protected. Moreover, this was all carried out by himself without anyone helping him. This one person had completely destroyed the dignity of the Yan-Huang alliance. Some of the Yan-Huang alliance guild members were furiously shouting to kill Ling Tian. This was what they had to do, as well as the only thing they could do to retrieve a bit of honor. Within Heart's Dream small room, the excited atmosphere had become one of dismay and fear. The girls' faces had all become pale. None of them expected that Ling Tian would actually kill Long Tianyun. However, right now this was not important. Ling Tian was currently surrounded by more and more Yan-Huang alliance members, all of whom were intent on killing him. The girls' hearts were beating so hard that they threatened to explode. With so many people around him, Ling Tian definitely wouldn't be able to escape. This was exchanging his life for Long Tianyun's life. Only Mu Bingyao remained completely calm. Looking at the colossal group of players around Ling Tian, she softly gave a cold harumph. "You want to kill my lord? You don't have the right." The entire Plains region was in uproar. Killing the alliance master of the Yan-Huang alliance was equivalent to killing an emperor in the olden days. The entire Yan-Huang alliance was now in movement, and there were now thousands of people charging at Ling Tian furiously. Even a god would not be able to escape. Ling Chen slightly frowned, and he coldly harumphed, and sprang into action. He charged into the group of players charging towards him, but because he was too fast and his action was too sudden, they were unable to react in time. As soon as he entered into the crowd, the players began to fall like leaves. Bang 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 bang. From the left and right, 2 Ling Tian bursts were sent out. In such a dense crowd, the Ling Tian bursts effects were fully displayed. A gray arc of light and a green arc of light flew out, and instantly wiped out 20 or so players. Ling Chen's attacks would never result in a miss. Coming into contact with Ling Tian's attacks was an instant death sentence. There were no exceptions. Those who were slashed by the Zephyr Blade immediately fell to the ground, and those who the Great Ravager came into contact with were sent flying, crashing into the players behind them. Ling Chen's actions did not stop at all, and continuously attacked within the group of players while quickly moving around. As such, the archers and mages were unable to lock onto his position. Every time he changed his position, 2 gigantic arcs of light would be sent out, resulting in pitiful cries as players died. In a 1 versus many fight, the worst thing that could happen was being surrounded. This was because once one was surrounded, it would be difficult to defend from both the front and back. However, Ling Chen was different, as he could use 2 weapons at the same time. Thus, he could attack in front and behind him at the same time. Every time he released a Ling Tian burst, he would clear out the area within 5 meters of him. By the time the next wave of players filled this area, his next Ling Tian burst would be there to meet them. Thus, those who came too near to him would instantly die, without even a chance to attack him. It was simply a massacre. Swish. Swish. Bang. Boom. The sounds of people being continuously hit and sent flying rang out, accompanied by the cries of people as they died. Ling Chen's two weapons were like two death god scythes, mercilessly killing waves and waves of players. Swish 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 swish. A large wave of arrows descended towards Ling Chen like a downpour of rain, covering the entire area around him. Similarly, countless elemental abilities rained down on the area around him. As the arrows and elemental attacks descended from above, Ling Chen did not panic, but rather continued to slaughter the Yan Huang Alliance's players with his Ling Tian bursts. When the arrows and elemental attacks finally fell on where he was, the spectating players all cried out in shock, as if they had already seen Ling Tian fall to the ground. However, they saw Ling Tian's body almost become illusory, and his speed skyrocketed as he charged towards the players behind him. In the blink of an eye, he had escaped from the area that the arrows and elemental attacks were falling towards. Raising his two weapons, he once again began to slaughter. 152308. Above Ling Tian's head, people only saw two damage figures. In such a dense attack, Ling Tian was only hit twice. The spectators simply could not believe their eyes. How had he done this? Could it be that just then, his body really had become illusory? He's simply a monster. Against the sky's eyes twitched. Evidently, he was very shocked by this sight. Right now, the Yan Huang Alliance was determined to kill him. Although there were probably thousands of people attacking him, he still had not died, and there were countless bodies of the Yan Huang Alliance on the ground. Indeed, he's even more terrifying than a monster. This sort of performance can't be achieved by just relying on levels or good equipment. However, he has his limits. Being blocked like this, it's impossible for him to escape, and I doubt he can last for too long. See if you can create an opening for him and get a favor. He will remember this. Skyfall said. I've already given out the orders. Right now, our players have more or less finished preparing. Ling Chen was like a sharp blade, stabbing in and out of the crowd of Yan Huang Alliance players. In just a moment, he had charged into the group of mages that posed the greatest threat to him. Having come into such close proximity with Ling Chen, these fragile mages were like defenseless lambs, and were annihilated by Ling Chen with two Ling Tian bursts. At this moment, in the distance, the light of a scroll flashed, and Long Tian Yun, who had been lying on the ground, slowly stood up. The revival scroll that Long Tian Yun had been preparing to use to revive Ling Tian after the Sword Emperor killed him was instead used on himself. Although Long Tian Yun had revived, he was still incredibly furious, to the point that his eyes became red. He personally ordered all of the Yan Huang Alliance's players, kill Ling Tian, he must die. However, just as his words came out, a player somewhere else called out, I can't watch this anymore. So many people attacking just a single person, this is too shameless. Ling Tian, I'll help you. This one sentence caused many other players to roar in approval, and a large group of players wearing different clothing and equipment charged towards the group of Yan Huang Alliance players attacking Ling Tian. However, it was evident from the actions of the new group of players that they were a group of people working together from the beginning. Looking to die. Seeing the group of players charging towards the Yan Huang Alliance's players, Long Tian Yun's expression became incredibly unsightly. The group of players coming to Ling Tian's assistance was surprisingly large, and there were more and more joining them, creating great pressure for the Yan Huang Alliance. Ling Tian did not pay much attention to them at all, his gaze was directed at the revived Long Tian Yun. He actually dared to revive. Ha ha ha. Ling Chen coldly laughed, and raised his right hand. The lunar scourge released an intense silver light. Flash. Arg. Countless voices cried out in agony. A terrifying bright light had cut into their eyes, painfully blinding them. No matter what they did, they were unable to get rid of the pain or open their eyes. The players in the distance were not affected, but the intense silver light caused them to look away, not daring to look in that direction. Within 36 meters around Ling Tian, the entire area was covered by the silver light. Inside that area, nothing could be seen except the intense light. From a distance, it looked like a silver sun had appeared. Protect the Alliance Master. Don't panic. No one panic. Immediately kill Ling Tian. It was painful to even slightly open their eyes, so they could only scream and yell as they stumbled around covering their eyes. They had no idea who they were attacking, and could not see at all. After 5 seconds, the silver light disappeared. Inside the area covered by the silver light, there were countless bodies strewn on the ground. Some of them were killed by Ling Tian, others were killed by their fellow guildmates in the confusion. By the time the nightmarish light had disappeared, they could not see Ling Tian anymore. Bastard! Flame Shadow gnashed his teeth. The light from before was definitely released by Ling Tian. Why did he have such a terrifying skill? He yelled loudly, in such a short period of time, Ling Tian can't have escaped too far away. He definitely changed the equipment he's wearing and is hiding in the crowd. Immediately find him for me. Young Master, should we, young Master. He suddenly discovered that his young master was no longer beside him. Flame Shadow trembled as he looked down, and found that Long Tianyun's body was lying beside his feet. In case you missed our post about our release schedule for the next few weeks, here it is. Being surrounded by thousands of Yan Huang Alliance players, he had been able to kill Long Tianyun not once, but twice, and was even able to safely escape. No one had ever been able to pull off such a feat before, and prior to today, no one would even believe such a thing was possible. Was this Ling Tian even human? Being enemies with such a person, the Yan Huang Alliance could not be intimidated by any person or any power, but yet when it came to Ling Tian. Immediately find me Ling Tian, he's definitely in the crowd somewhere. Despite Flame Shadow yelling out in a loud voice, everyone could hear a sense of powerlessness in his voice. The Flame Emperor had been killed, the Sword Emperor had been defeated, and Long Tianyun had been killed twice. After today, Ling Tian's name would resound like thunder throughout the entirety of China. As for the Yan Huang Alliance, it had been reduced to a stepping stone for Ling Tian, having been completely defeated by him. There were countless players gathered at the plains region. Ling Tian, who was probably hiding within the crowd, had definitely already changed the equipment he had on, and his mask was a very commonly used one. Finding him in such a large crowd was like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Moreover, with his power, how could he be found so easily? Just as the Yan Huang Alliance began their search for Ling Tian, players began to quickly leave. Soon, more and more players were beginning to leave in different directions. There were simply too many people leaving, and even with thousands of people present, it was impossible for the Yan Huang Alliance to stop everyone. They could only watch as masses of people departed. It was almost impossible to find Ling Tian in such conditions. In the end, they could only cut their losses and collect the items and equipment that the players who had died had dropped. From yesterday to today, the Yan Huang Alliance's dignity and reputation had plummeted, and this was the first time the guild members of the Yan Huang Alliance had felt so ashamed to be part of it. There were still some people remaining who were looking around to see if Ling Tian would reappear, in hope that they would see this legendary figure again. Why did he kill Long Tianyun? He shouldn't have done this. Yun Feng's mind was a complete mess. Yesterday, Ling Tian had directly confessed that it was him who had defrauded Long Tianyun, but he said that he wouldn't make an enemy of Long Tianyun. However, what he did just then was in complete contradiction to his words from yesterday. Having killed Long Tianyun would definitely hate him to the bones, and would use the full force of the Yan Huang Alliance to completely crush him. Do you know him? Beside him, Xiao Qiufeng suddenly asked. No, I don't. Yunfeng quickly shook his head. You don't? Xiao Qiufeng gave a slight harumph. I heard Chi say that it was you who recruited Ling Tian into Heart's Dream. A trail of cold sweat rolled down Yunfeng's forehead. If this was known by Long Tianyun, it would be easy for him to discover Ling Tian's identity through Yunfeng, which would be disastrous. Yunfeng gritted his teeth, and desperately tried to think of an excuse or explanation. However, Xiao Qiufeng had already turned to leave, and a cold voice entered Yunfeng's ears. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. However, if it's possible, I'd like to get to know this Ling Tian. Annihilating the Flame Emperor, defeating the Sword Emperor and disrespecting Long Tianyun to such a degree, then escaping so easily, he's a true man. Yunfeng let out a breath of relief. Hearing Xiao Qiufeng say such a thing, he could be at ease. Before, he didn't think that there was such great enmity between Ling Chen and Long Tianyun. It seemed that he would have to be more careful from now on. Any evidence of a connection between Ling Chen and himself had to be covered up, otherwise, there would be great trouble for himself, Meng Xian, as well as any other of Ling Chen's friends. Yunfeng was very curious as to what caused Ling Chen to hate Long Tianyun so much. There weren't any people around where he was, so he turned on his communication device and contacted Ling Chen, asking in a low voice, Ling Tian, are you all right? Ling Chen calmly replied. Why did you kill Long Tianyun? Didn't you think of the consequences? The Yan-Huang alliance is much more powerful than you think, and didn't you say yesterday, I let my emotions get the better of me? Ling Chen bitterly laughed. Although I completely and utterly hate him, I was too rash. However, I don't regret it at all. Since I've already started this, in future, whenever I see him, I'll kill him. As for consequences, I'm not too worried. I'm not afraid of their revenge. Yunfeng was shocked. Yunfeng, you saved Shui Rua, so I will definitely accomplish what I promised you. Moreover, I won't bring any trouble to your Yun family, and especially not Meng Xian. Don't worry. Ling Chen replied. Yunfeng was silent for a while, then shook his head and sighed. Ling Tian, the things you did today made me feel shocked, confused, but also excited. You're a true hero, a real man. No less than what's expected of someone who I saw once then spent 3 years looking for. Whatever is the result, I'll stand by your side. You don't have to worry about Meng Xian and myself too much. Long Tianyun doesn't dare to casually offend our Yun family. After all, this is a personal grievance between Long Tianyun and you. Even if Long Tianyun knew of our connection with you, he wouldn't be able to do anything to us. The one I'm worried about is you. You and Shui Rua need to be careful, and don't let them find out anything about you. Don't worry, there won't be any problem with our safety. Long Tianyun better pray that he doesn't find out anything about us. This sentence was completely incomprehensible to Yunfeng. I'm a bit tired, we'll talk of other things tomorrow. After Ling Chen hung up his communication device, Yunfeng raised his head and looked at the empty plains around him, and quietly said, Ling Chen, just who are you exactly? Big news. A new number 1 of the heaven rankings has appeared. The number 1 on the level rankings, fame rankings, equipment rankings, pet rankings, Ling Tian, Shas defeated the Sword Emperor, and has become number 1 on the heaven rankings. Selling Ling Tian vs Sword Emperor video. HD, no mosaic, super close-up action. Priceless. Buying any method to contact Ling Tian personally. I'm willing to pay a high price. I want to ask Ling Tian to be my bro. Annihilating the Flame Emperor, defeating the Sword Emperor and killing Long Tianyun twice, then fighting the entire Yan-Huang alliance. What is the true identity of this Ling Tian person? Is he some sort of hidden expert? A descendant of a legendary martial arts or ESP family? Or a creation of God? Rumor says that after going back, Alliance Master Long started to vomit up blood, and vowed to cut Ling Tian into 1,000 pieces. Within 3 days, he's going to issue a permanent order to continuously kill Ling Tian. If his real-life identity is found, then, hee. The events that had occurred at the Plains region caused great waves to be sent throughout all of China, which certainly would not die down within a short period of time. The first time the name Ling Tian had appeared, it hung far above normal players, but now, it surpassed even the Sword Emperor, and stood at the very peak of the mountain of players. Moreover, the tales of Ling Tian became more and more exaggerated, until he was told of as an existence comparable to even Eve. The entire world was in uproar because of him, but at the moment he himself sat in silence. Ling Chen silently sat against a large tree, deep in thought. The equipment he currently had equipped were extremely plain, and he had changed his mask. Even if someone passed in front of him, they would not be able to recognize him as Ling Tian. "Big brother, where are you?" Shui Ruo's worried voice caused Ling Chen to open his eyes. He gently replied, "I'm at the boundary of Peace Town. We're coming over now, wait for us." Ling Chen raised his head, and once again closed his eyes. Him killing Long Tianyun probably made all of the girls extremely worried. After all, with the Yan-Huang Alliance's power, if he wasn't strong enough, he would never be able to appear in public again. A short while later, a black shadow soundlessly appeared, and knelt down in front of Ling Chen. Ling Chen did not open his eyes, but said in a low voice, "I was too rash just then." The black shadow stayed silent. However, the original plan does not change. "Roger. Before, who were the ones that had helped me?" Ling Chen asked. "Skyfall Dynasty." The black shadow curtly replied. "I thought so." Ling Chen gave a calm laugh, "only they would dare to take such a risk to help me in such circumstances. They wanted me to owe them a favor, but it's a pity that I'm going to give them a big gift. Not that I think about it, I feel a bit bad." "No need." "Of course there's no need," Ling Chen once again laughed, but his expression then became serious. "The reason I called you here was to ask you how much you know about the Sword Emperor." The black shadow thought for a while, then replied, "Sword Emperor's real name is Feng Xiaoyu, with an unknown history. The Sword Emperor only appears in the virtual world, and lives in secrecy in the real world. We have not paid much attention to the Sword Emperor before." "That's all you have?" "Yes. Do you remember, 6 years ago I asked you all to look for information about Xianyuan Diawu? Go and investigate what's the connection between the Sword Emperor and Xianyuan Diawu." The black shadow remained in silence for a while, then nodded and prepared to leave. "Wait." Ling Chen suddenly called to stop him. His chest rose up, and his face slightly twisted in pain and indecision. After a long pause, he said in a low voice, "Forget it, there's no need to look into it. 13 years ago, Xianyuan Diawu already died. The Sword Emperor is Feng Xiaoyu, not Diawu, right now, I only have Shui Ruo." Once again the black shadow did not respond. The black shadow turned, and silently left. At this moment, he completely understood why Ling Chen had zoned out during the fight with the Sword Emperor, as well as why he was so determined to kill Long Tianyun afterwards. He definitely would not forget what happened 6 years ago, when Ling Chen had found out that Xianyuan Diawu had already fasted to death. Ling Chen's emotions had completely run out of control, and the hellish pain had caused him tears to flow out in grief. That Sword Emperor, could it be, Xianyuan Diawu? Diaer. Is it really you? My Diaer. My wife. How could he forget, how could he just lie to himself like that? Because that person was someone who he had been willing to protect with his life. Diaer, is it really you? Why do I so desperately hope that it is you, yet at the same time hope that it isn't? If it isn't you, my heart will be shattered again. If it is, what should I do? He heavily leaned back against the tree, his heart in shambles. Ling, hugging a doll, appeared at his side, curiously looking at him. Master, Ling wants to hear Master tell a story. With one hand, Ling hugged her doll, and used the other hand to pat Ling Chen's shoulder. Her soft, gentle voice broke the silence that hung over the area. Ling Chen gave a slight smile, and replied, Master is a bit tired today, so I'll tell Ling a story tomorrow. Here, this doll is for you. He took out a doll and gave it to her, causing her to become extremely delighted. Not too long after, 5 familiar silhouettes appeared, walking towards Ling Chen. The appearance of these people caused Ling to hurriedly return to the pet dimension. Big Brother. As soon as she arrived, Shui was able to sense that Ling Chen's spirits were quite low. Her emotions also plummeted, and she walked over to him and sat down. Big Brother Ling Tian, are you alright? Did you know? You were so cool and awesome today. Shao Qi loudly said. Is that so? Ling Chen smiled, and held Shui Ruo's small hands. He looked to Yun Meng Xian and said, Meng Xian, I lost control and ended up killing Long Tian Yun. Don't worry, Yun Meng Xian gently shook her head, you have the freedom to do whatever you want. We're all guildmates, so we don't want to burden you or inhibit your freedom. As long as you're okay, that's fine. That's right, that's right. Shao Qi vigorously nodded her head. I know that Big Brother Ling Tian must be worried that Long Tian Yun might take revenge on us because of our connection to you. Don't worry. Even if he knows that we're guildmates, he can't do anything to us. I'm the princess of the Battle Alliance, so I'm not afraid of him at all. Suer's dad is the mayor of Beijing, and Suer's uncle is also quite influential as well. Plus, he's after Big Sister Meng Xian, so he won't do anything to her, and Big Sister Bing Yao is so strong that she doesn't have to be afraid of him at all. Even if he tortured us, we wouldn't tell him your true identity, because we don't even know. So, Big Brother Ling Tian just has to look after himself. You don't have to worry about us at all. Big Brother Ling Tian, please take care of yourself. Suer said in a nervous voice while blushing. A warm feeling spread throughout Ling Chen's heart, and his gaze rested on each of the 3 girls' faces. He smiled, and replied, Don't worry, I'll definitely protect myself. Unless I permit it, Long Tian Yun can do nothing to me. We all believe Big Brother Ling Tian. Big Brother Ling Tian, did you know? You were so cool today. So cool that you just can't describe it. Right now the whole world is talking about you. Wherever we go, people are always talking about you. Right now, Big Brother Ling Tian has become the idol of the entire country. Really? Ling Chen amusedly laughed. Now that you're number 1 on the heaven rankings, more and more people will be paying attention to you. No matter where you go, you'll always see things about you. The waves you've created will last for quite a long time, as the things you did today were probably the most exciting things that have happened in a long time. Moreover, you've also raised quite a bit of attention in other countries as well. Yun Meng Xian said. People will soon forget about this sort of thing after a while, don't pay too much attention to it. Ling Chen calmly and casually replied. Then, Big Brother Ling Tian, can you fulfill a small wish of ours? Shao Qi clasped her hands together, her body leaning towards, looking at Ling Chen with a sparkle in her eyes. Ling Chen was a bit shocked. A small wish? The ever-energetic and playful Shao Qi suddenly seemed to be a bit bashful and nervous. She battered her eyelashes, and said anxiously, Right now, we've all known Big Brother Ling Tian for a while, but none of us have seen your face before. Can we see what the Big Brother who we think is so cool, so strong, looks like? After speaking, Shao Qi once again stared into his eyes. Although they had all known each other for quite a while now, they had never seen what Ling Chen really looked like. The more time passed by, the more their curiosity grew. Ling Chen's hand moved to his mask, and stopped there. As the girl's hearts sped up, he put down his hand, and gently shook his head. I'm afraid that if I take off my mask, everyone will be disappointed. I think I'll let you all keep whatever images you have in your head, haha. No way, we definitely won't be disappointed. Shao Qi almost began to jump up and down. Big brother Ling Tian is so strong, he's definitely very handsome. Ling Chen continued to shake his head. For this period of time, I'm going to be getting my emotions back in control. When the time comes, I'll show you all my face. But, Shao Qi wasn't willing to give up so easily, but just as she began to speak, she was cut off by Meng Xian. That's alright, we believe that it won't be too far away. Ling Tian, you seem quite down, did something happen? I remembered some blissful, yet also painful memories. Ling Chen held Shui Ruo's hand as he stood up, and sighed. It doesn't matter though, people always have times when they're down. I'll be fine in a bit. I'm a bit tired today, so Shui Ruo and I are going to log off. We'll see you tomorrow. Yun Meng Xian nodded. After he exited the mystic moon world, Ling Chen opened his eyes, and looked at the white ceiling, his emotions in disarray. No matter if he opened his eyes or closed his eyes, what he saw and thought of was inevitably the Sword Emperor, completely wrapped up in her black cloak. Big brother, what made you so upset? Beside him, Shui Ruo lay on the bed, listening to his irregular heartbeat. When she was sick, she knew that Ling Chen had never been truly happy. After her recovery, both of them had been extremely joyful every day. However, something had caused Ling Chen's emotions to spin out of control. Shui Ruo, Ling Chen started to speak, but had no idea how to say it to Shui Ruo. Big brother, if there's anything that makes you feel down, please tell me, alright? That way, I can help big brother forget about those things. Ling Shui Ruo reached over and hugged him, gently whispering into his ear. As such, he decided to tell everything to this girl who was even more important to him than his life. The room quietened down, and the only thing that could be heard were both of them breathing gently. After a long while, Ling Chen put his arm around Shui Ruo and looked up at the ceiling as he slowly said, Ruo, I'll tell you a story. It's a story that happened a long time ago, before I met Ruo. Shui Ruo did not reply, instead gently nodding and moving closer to Ling Chen. Ling Chen closed his eyes, and cast his mind back to the memories that were sealed deep in his brain. In a very powerful, very influential family, a boy was born in the wrong place at the wrong time. The year he was born, his mother had died. Before his mother died, she had given him the name Tian, TLN, Heaven's Edge, because she could see his future. He belonged at the edges of heaven, the boundaries of the sea, TLN, meaning he should be free, as opposed to a powerful family. At that time, Tian didn't understand the meaning of the name his mother had given him, and continued to live in that family. His status in that family was very special. No one was willing to speak to him or even come into contact with him. Everyone would look at him strangely, but would not neglect him by letting him starve or freeze. Just like this, the boy called Tian grew up in loneliness and solitude. That family was extremely large, and every day there would be many people coming and going. Some were other families allied with his family, others were families that were there to protect his family. In one of these families, Tian met a girl who was about his age. She belonged to one of the strongest families that protected his family. It was a pity that the family she belonged to only valued boys, and she was often neglected and bullied. However, that girl was incredibly cute and kind. They met when Tian was 5. She smiled at him, then shared a large pile of candy with him. Tian, who had always lived in loneliness, began to unceasingly think of that girl. Afterwards, he found out that she was called Jia Wu, Butterfly's Dance, and that they were born in the same year, same month and same date. This sort of coincidence was as if the heavens had caused them to meet by fate. Afterwards, when she was being bullied by some other kids, the boy rushed up and fought with them. He was not very strong, but he was incredibly vicious. In order to protect and stand up for Jia Wu, he was beaten very severely, but also injured the other kids quite a bit as well. From the onwards, whenever someone would try to bully Jia Wu, he would charge over like a rabid wolf. For her, his body was always covered in many bruises. Although it was very painful, he did not regret it at all. For him, who had been accustomed to living in loneliness, that girl's smile was incredibly beautiful and completely moved him. When they were 6, Jia Wu pulled him to the garden. Under a tree, she gave him a cake that had a few flowers and leaves on it, and wished him a happy birthday. That day, they had celebrated their birthdays together. It was the first time Tian had ever celebrated his birthday, because before then, no one even remembered his birthday. Even he had forgotten that it was his own birthday. On that day, Tian cried. Initially Jia Wu laughed at him, saying that boys shouldn't cry, but soon, she began to cry with him as well. At that time, Jia Wu probably had no idea what that cake, covered with flowers and leaves, and that happy birthday meant to Tian. Tian continued to live in solitude as he grew up. However, as time passed, people began to avoid him more and more. They were unwilling to even go near him, as if he had some kind of disease. There, he felt that his life was completely meaningless, and that there was no point to his existence. In that sort of environment, he had matured quite quickly. However, after being together with Jia Wu, his entire life changed. From the time they were 6 years old, they were together nearly every day, and had innumerable things to talk about. Jia Wu was his teacher. By the time she was 6, she was able to read and write more than 1,000 words, and had a decent mathematical knowledge. When they were together, she would carefully and patiently teach Tian. Tian had never been to school before, but he could not be considered uneducated. This was because he had a very good teacher, who was Jia Wu. No matter what Jia Wu taught him, he would learn it extremely quickly, and would not forget any of it. As Jia Wu learnt more and more herself, she taught Tian more and more. At that time, although Jia Wu's family didn't really care about her, they were unwilling to see her together with Tian, so they tried to stop her and rebuked her. Even though Jia Wu was a gentle and kind girl, deep down she could be quite stubborn too. She, who had always been obedient, refused to comply this time. Her family also talked to Tian many times, and warned him to stay away from Jia Wu. One of Jia Wu's older brothers even mockingly called Tian scum, and said that he should have been kicked out long ago. He said many humiliating things, but Tian endured it all. This was because Jia Wu's older brother was 10 or so years old at that time, and was quite strong. Tian knew that he definitely wouldn't be able to beat him in a fight, and he didn't want to risk not being able to meet Jia Wu anymore. Although Jia Wu's brother relentlessly mocked Tian, because of Tian's special status, he did not dare to physically attack him. Perhaps it was because Jia Wu was incredibly stubborn, or perhaps she was like Tian, and saw him as he saw her, as the most important person in her life. Finally, her family relented. As long as she practiced her sword skills for 6 hours every day, the rest of the day she could have as her free time. That family was one that specialized in swords, and was an ancient, secretive martial arts family. Jia Wu agreed. She, who had never touched a sword before, and was unwilling to even come into contact with such a thing that could take away lives, bitterly trained. Every day, after she finished her practice, she would go to find Tian, and teach him everything she knew. Whenever she learnt a new sword skill, she would show it to him. She once said that she would practice hard, so that she could become as strong as her father and her big brother, so that when she grew up she could protect Tian. Everything she taught him, every single word she said to him, as well as every sword skill she showed him, Tian remembered it all in his heart. They even began to create their own sword skills that were fun and looked nice. Although the time they had together had been reduced, they were still quite satisfied and happy. Although they were both still quite young, they had already understood what mutual dependence meant. Ling Shui Ruo silently listened, and did not say anything that would distract Ling Chen. After all, she knew nothing about his past, but every time she had asked him, he would say that he had forgotten everything. As such, she decided not to ask any more. If the things from the past were that painful, she would prefer that he did not have to think of those things again. However, deep in her heart, she wanted to completely understand him and his past. No matter what had happened, she would help him through it and heal his wounds, and gradually help him forget about it. Jia Wu's talent with swords was simply outstanding. She, who had always been neglected, was now revered as a genius, and was greatly favored by her family. At the same time, they also began to gradually shorten the time she had with Tian. However, despite this, Jia Wu would continue to go and find Tian, especially when it was their birthday. She would spend the entire day with him. As each day passed, they became more and more inseparable. As Tian grew up, the way people looked at him grew weirder and weirder. However, Tian did not care about this at all. He was happy as long as Jia Wu was by his side. However, even such a simple thing was eventually bound to be taken from him. Ling Shui Ruo's small hands unconsciously clasped together. There was a young master in that family, a young master who was respected by everyone, someone who had grown up in praise and admiration. No matter what commands he gave, they would surely be fulfilled. That young master was older than Tian by 4 years, but their differences were as large as heaven and earth. Because the young master was always out, Tian very rarely saw him. Every time they saw each other, he would nod his head towards Tian in a friendly way. Although they never spoke, he was not as cold and harsh towards Tian than other people. On the 5th day after Tian's 9th birthday, that young master suddenly returned home, and as they walked past each other, Tian found that his leg had been pricked by something. When he returned to his room, he found that there was a small needle hole. Tian thought that perhaps there was something sharp on the young master's body, and had accidentally poked into him while they were walking past each other. The Tian back then was not willing to associate with anyone except for Jia Wu, and he didn't want to unnecessarily cause any trouble. As such, he didn't pay much notice to this incident, and soon forgot about it, and did not even tell Jia Wu. However, from that night, his body often felt very light, and could clearly feel his strength flowing out from him. He usually slept at 10 p.m., but found that he went to bed earlier and earlier, and woke up later and later. He found that he didn't want to walk or eat. Every day, he felt weaker and weaker, and his complexion became more and more pale. In order to not worry Jia Wu, he tried his best to act normal when he was with her. At that time, he naively believed that he just had a cold, and that he would be better in a few days. After 3 days, a big group of people wearing white clothes came to the family, and said that they were there to do a checkup on the whole family. Every wealthy and influential family did such checkups, and everyone had to go through them, even servants. However, this time, they came much earlier than previous years. Although Tian had never been checked before, this time they seemed to be especially focused on him. The results of his checkup sent the entire family into fear. Ling Chen's eyes slightly opened, his eyes filled with a glow of hatred. What they found in Tian was the world's most terrifying disease. Isrock disease. Ah! Ling Shui Ruo cried out. Her body trembled, and she grabbed onto Ling Chen's hands, worriedly shouting, and then, what happened to Tian? Ling Chen gently held Shui Ruo's small hands in his own, and his tone became gentle again. The Isrock disease that Ling Chen had contracted sent the entire family spiraling into fear. However, it was fortunate that Tian had not contracted the Isrock disease for too long, and he hadn't transmitted it to anyone. Apart from Tian, no one had contracted the disease. On that day, the family completely disinfected every single inch of their residence, and everything that Tian had come into contact with was destroyed with fire. As for Tian, he had become like a terrifying demon to everyone else. Whenever people saw him, they would run away in terror. Even the auntie who cooked for him and looked after him would stay far away from him. In the afternoon, he was locked up by a few people dressed in biohazard suits. They said it was only a temporary quarantine, so that no one else was infected, and that they would immediately inform the head of the family so that he could take care of things. Tian was already 9 at that time, and he fully knew how terrifying the Isrock disease was. There was no incubation period, and once someone was infected, it would rapidly devour a person's life force. At that time, Tian had already contracted the disease for 4 days. After finding out that he had the Isrock disease, he felt that he no longer had the strength to stand, and lay like a corpse on the cold, hard ground. He somewhat wished that he could just die there and then, but he also didn't want to die, as he didn't want to lose Jia Wu. Just as he was calling out Jia Wu's name, she appeared. She had gotten hold of a key, and unlocked the door. She rushed in, and hugged him while crying. Seeing Jia Wu, he was extremely happy, as if his dream had come true. However, he immediately pushed her away, and yelled at her to leave, and to stay away from him. Even if he was going to die, he didn't want to infect Jia Wu with the Isrock disease as well. However, Jia Wu continued to hug him, and no matter what he did, he was unable to push her away. Remembering that scene, Ling Chen's heart trembled in happiness, as well as pain. On that night, Jia Wu carried the strengthless Tian on her back to a small creek that they liked to go to together. The night sky on that night was especially beautiful, and there was not a single cloud in the sky. Tian's head lay on Jia Wu's legs, and he looked up at the sky full of countless stars, as well as a pair of eyes that were even more beautiful than the stars in the sky. Jia, I don't want to die. If I die, I won't be able to see your eyes or hear your voice. Jia, big brother Tian, you're a man, so you can't cry, we all can't cry, nothing's going to happen to you, no matter what happens, I'll stay with you, my everything belongs to my Tian. If big brother Tian really died, I will also die, no one will ever see my eyes again. No one will ever hear my voice. The girl's voice from that night rang in his ears, assaulting his mind and emotions. On that night, they were together for a long time. Jia Wu told him that he absolutely couldn't give up hope, because he still had her. She would convince her family to try to find a cure for the Isrock disease. However, before then, Isrock disease had never been successfully cured before, and at most one had a few years to live. In order to give him more hope, she took out a long piece of red string that she had prepared earlier. She bound one end on Tian's pinky finger on her right hand, and bound the other end on her own pinky finger on her left hand. Ling Chen clearly saw that scene in his mind. He remembered that had happened on that night with absolute clarity. He would never forget until the day he died. This piece of red string is a symbol that the god of marriage has bound us together. One end is attached to you, and the other end is attached to me. Big brother Tian, do you know what this means? He, it means that from now on, Xianyuan Jia Wu has become big brother Tian's wife, from now till forever. Big brother Tian is my husband, and we'll always be together. No matter what happens, we'll never be separated. Under the silvery moonlight, the young girl held the young boy's hand, and closed her eyes, praying to the heavens. Xianyuan Jia Wu, am willing to become big brother Tian's wife. We were born on the same date in the same month and year, and I'm willing to die with him on the same date in the same month and year. This entire life, I'll only belong to big brother Tian. Heavens, please be the witness of everything I've said. If I go back on any of my words, let me suffer eternal punishment. Please bless big brother Tian and myself so that no matter what happens, we can always be together. Just like this, the girl sincerely and earnestly made a promise and a wish, binding her life to this boy who was very likely going to die. Tian, who had originally given up all hope, once again had a strong desire to live. For Jia Wu, he continued to be strong, and was unwilling to die. This was because they were now bound together. On that night, they stayed at the creek until it was dawn. Jia Wu then carried him back to his room. The family's security was usually extremely tight, and not even a fly could pass through without their detection. Somehow, when they were going out, or coming back, no one found out. When she was leaving, Jia Wu gently kissed him. It was the first time Tian had been kissed by a girl, and it was also the first time he had kissed a girl. It was possible to transmit the Isrock disease through saliva, so Tian initially refused, but his weak body was unable to stop Jia Wu. After all, Jia Wu told him that no matter what happened to him, she would not reject him at all. She would even be willing to contract the Isrock disease with him. Jia Wu, she's truly a good, kind girl. Ling Rua said quietly. In her mind was the scene Ling Chen was describing. The more she listened to Ling Chen's story, the more she wanted to meet that girl called Jia Wu, and thank her for being so kind to the boy called Tian, just like how Big Brother refused to abandon her while she was still sick. The only reason she was able to survive for 3 years after contracting the Isrock disease was because of Ling Chen. After Jia Wu left, Tian was left in the darkness by himself. Tian gritted his teeth, and resisted the feeling of strengthlessness in his body. No matter what, he wanted to live for as long as possible. However, 10 or so minutes after Jia Wu left, the door was suddenly opened, and a few people charged in. Before Tian even had the chance to make a sound, something was shoved into his mouth, and his body was thrown into a large sack. Ah! Shui Rua, who was already very tense, let out a gasp. Tian didn't know what had happened, and he was unable to make a sound because of whatever had been stuffed into his mouth. He felt himself tightly wrapped in the bag, unable to move, and was carried away. After a while, he felt himself being thrown down, and lost consciousness. Just before he passed out, he heard the starting of a car engine. Where did they take him? What were they going to do with him? Ling Rua couldn't help but ask anxiously, her hands covered in cold sweat. Ling Chen continued to calmly narrate. When Tian woke up, he was once again thrown downwards. This time, he was thrown into a cold, dark place. Afterwards, he felt clumps of things falling down on him, which became heavier and heavier. It became harder and harder for him to breathe, and he realized what was falling on him was dirt. He was being buried in a very deep pit. Shui Rua's body began to shake. Tian desperately struggled, but he was so weak that he could not budge the dirt at all. There was something stuffed in his mouth, and he couldn't even make a sound. Slowly, he lost consciousness. He knew that he was going to die. He stopped struggling, and as he felt his last bit of energy disappearing, he thought back to the times he had spent with Jia Wu. He wasn't afraid of dying, but he was afraid that if he disappeared, and Jia Wu couldn't find him, she'd be completely heartbroken and devastated, because today she had become his wife. Why would they do such a thing to him? He never did anything wrong, but those people were so cold, so cruel to him. Why were they so cruel that they would bury him alive? Streaks of tears traveled down Shui Rua's face, and she buried her head into Ling Chen's chest as she sobbed. Ling Chen tightly hugged her, and gave a long sigh, because as long as he existed, he was like a poisonous thorn to that family. Anyone who saw him would feel uncomfortable, and yet they couldn't drive him out, much less hurt him. Especially to the young master, he was a ticking bomb that could explode at any time. As the young master grew up and became more and more intelligent and devious, this became more and more clear to him. Why was this? Shui Rua raised her head as she asked. Why? The reason isn't too important anymore. From that night onwards, they all believed that Tian had died, and had thought up many reasons for his death. The reason behind all this is not too important anymore. From that day onwards, there was no longer any connection between Tian and that family, and there never would be. And then, what happened to Tian? Shui Ruo used her hands to wipe away her tears as she gently asked. Afterwards, just as he was about to release himself into death's embrace, he heard some people talking above him. Although the voices were quite soft, he was able to hear clearly. Is this really the right thing to do? After all, this is something the young master explicitly ordered. No need to waste your breath. Quickly erase all evidence and go. No one usually comes here, being buried here, he won't be discovered for maybe 10 years. Young master's so cunning at such a young age, he's definitely got a bright future in front of him. Their words caused the strengthless Tian's eyes to fly open. Boundless hatred filled his mind, and waves like floodwaters crashed in his heart. He didn't know where the energy came from, but he started to desperately struggle again, as well as tried to call out. The hatred within him caused him to be unwilling to give up and die. He wanted to meet Jia Wu again, he wanted to go and ask the young master why he would do such a thing, he wanted revenge. The sound of an engine starting sounded out, and the people who had brought him here left. His willpower was strengthened by his hatred, and he continued to struggle furiously. Since he was born, he had been born into an emotionally cold and harsh environment. Perhaps he had always been suppressing his unhappiness and resentment, but in the face of such despair and stimulation, this was all released. At that moment, his desire was to kill every single person except Jia Wu. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he knew that he had been buried for a very, very long time. Tian didn't know that still being alive after being buried for such a long time in his weakened state was already something incredible. Afterwards, he finally reached his limits. His consciousness began to fade, and began to draw nearer and nearer to death, but the hatred in his heart was still just as strong. Just as he completely lost consciousness, a deafening sound erupted above him, and he felt himself being grasped and raised up. He subsequently lost consciousness. And then, who saved Tian? He was fine, right? Shui Ruo's voice was incredibly anxious and worried. Indeed, someone had saved him. It was someone who was just passing by. The reason for them saving him was because of the resent and hatred that he was releasing. What that person was trying to find was people who were filled with hatred and resentment, the type of people who were absolutely determined not to die. The person rescued Tian, and took him to a faraway place, a place called Heaven. He stayed at Heaven for 3 years. There were countless times when his mind and spirit were nearly completely broken, and they were stimulated to reach new limits. His body was always bathed in a special liquid that the madman created. Just like this, after 3 years, his mind and spirit, as well as body, became monstrously strong. Out of those 1353 children, 1351 could not handle the experimentation and died. Only 2 children survived, a boy and a girl. The boy was number 1353, and the girl was number 17. She had red hair and blue eyes. A few sentences spanned an entire 3 years. Ling Chen spoke very calmly. He had endured so much, and he felt nothing when looking back. However, anyone would know that in those 3 years, facing death countless times would have resulted in unimaginable pain and torture. Shui Ruo's heart was in pieces, and she hugged Ling Chen while sobbing. The reason why Tian was able to endure all of this was because he was not willing to die. He wanted to take revenge, he wanted to see Jia Wu again. After the 3rd year, he was taken by the person who had saved him to a place called Hell. That person was also called Hell. There were many people there, who looked at Tian and number 17 with cruelty and pity in their eyes. The people there called the man Instructor Hell, and they all feared him immensely. No one dared to disobey his orders. It was there that he and number 17 learnt many terrifying killing techniques. Although his mind and spirit had been repeatedly devastated over the past 3 years, Tian's memories were still intact. After enduring 3 years of pain, there was nothing he could not take anymore. In order to take revenge, in order to see Jia Wu again and protect her, Tianya went all out in learning and practicing. Tianya and number 17's minds, spirit and bodies were terrifyingly strong, and they surpassed everyone else there in a short period of time. Deserts, oceans, forests, marshes, mountains, they had never failed any of their training in these sorts of difficult environments. Afterwards, Tianya began to learn true killing techniques. Surprisingly, the first time he killed someone, he did not feel afraid or hesitant, but rather did it quickly and cleanly, as if plucking out a blade of grass. From then onwards, he would kill people almost every day. Those few years, he killed many, many people, so many that he could not remember if it was hundreds or thousands. At that time, he knew that he had become an evil demon, as well as that he was no longer good enough for Jia Wu. However, he still greatly desired to see her again, and then use his strength to take revenge. No way, no way. Shui Ruo's face paled as she furiously shook her head. Jia Wu wouldn't blame him, much less despise or be afraid of him. Jia Wu said that no matter what he became like, she would always be together with him. If Tianya killed so many people, but left her behind, that would be devastating to her. Ling Chen slightly smiled, I know, the killings Tianya carried out were all ordered by Instructor Hell. However, the person who Tianya wanted to kill most was Instructor Hell. As long as he did not die, Tianya would never have freedom. Everyone under Instructor Hell's command all wanted him dead. However, Instructor Hell was truly terrifying. Even if Tianya worked together with number 17 and everyone else, they would not necessarily be able to defeat Instructor Hell. He was something that the mad scientist called a god. Many leaders of countries, upon hearing his name, would break out in cold sweat. There were people who tried to retaliate against Instructor Hell, or tried to escape from his control. Unfortunately, those people all died pitiful deaths. After they died, their bodies would be sent to the mad scientist, and became his experimental subjects. The two people who Instructor Hell was least vigilant about was Tianya and number 17, as the mad scientist told him that he had already put mental restrictions on them, and they would forever obey his commands. However, neither Instructor Hell nor the mad scientist knew that Tianya and number 17 had already escaped from the mental restrictions using special methods. What that special method was, Ling Chen did not describe, nor was he able to describe it. After being trained by Instructor Hell for 3 years, Tianya couldn't take it anymore. Together with number 17, they planned how they would kill Instructor Hell. As such, using Instructor Hell's lowered wariness towards them to their advantage, they planted a liquid bomb on the island they were doing training on. As soon as Instructor Hell drew near, they detonated the bomb. However, Instructor Hell was very sensitive towards danger, and he was able to dodge. When the bomb detonated, he only lost his right hand. Luckily, the nerves on his right hand were damaged, and he was unable to use it. Facing Instructor Hell, who was only able to use his left hand, Tianya and number 17 had a chance, so they charged up with knives in their hands to kill him. That battle was incredibly intense and deadly. Even without his right hand, Instructor Hell was able to inflict many injuries on Tianya and number 17. However, he had taken heavy damage, and the longer they battled, the more blood he lost. In that battle, Tianya was struck by Instructor Hell 29 times, number 17 was hit 13 times, whereas Instructor Hell had taken 13 hits from both of them. Finally, number 17 was able to cut off Instructor Hell's entire right arm, and Tianya rushed up and used all of his power to plunge his broken dagger into Instructor Hell's stronger-than-steel body, piercing into his heart. Before he died, Instructor Hell displayed a desperate burst of strength, and jumped into the ocean. Although they could not find his body, because his heart had been completely pierced, he could not possibly have survived. Because of Instructor Hell's death, those under his control were all freed. When Tianya and number 17 brought Instructor Hell's arm to them, they all started to cheer in joy, and expressed their willingness to become Tianya and number 17's subordinates. They had all decided that whoever could kill Instructor Hell and let them leave this hell, they would be forever loyal to them. Tianya was Asian, so all of the Asian people followed him. Number 17 was Caucasian, so all the Caucasian people followed her. On the third day after killing Instructor Hell, Tianya and number 17 returned to heaven. However, they did not find the mad scientist. The mad scientist had terrifying intelligence and wisdom, but did not have Instructor Hell's strength and power, so they did not continue to look for him. Not long after, Tianya suddenly took his subordinates and left, returning to China. He did not even say goodbye to number 17. This was because number 17 expressed her willingness to go to China with him, but Tianya only had Jia Wu in his heart, so he secretly left. After he left, did he reunite with Jia Wu? Shui Rua anxiously asked. No, Ling Chen shook his head. After he returned to China, Tianya immediately sent his people to investigate how that family group and Jia Wu were. His subordinates all had superb intelligence-gathering skills, so they quickly reported back to Tianya. 7 years ago, which was when Tianya had been taken to heaven, she refused to eat and fasted to death. Ah! Shui Rua cried out in shock. She shook her head, unwilling to accept it. No, how could it be like this? How could it be? After hearing about that, Ling Chen felt incredible pain, to the point that he almost became crazy. In fact, he really did go crazy. He secretly infiltrated that family by himself, because he knew how terrifying that family's defenses and security measures were. They had all of the most high-tech weapons, as well as the strongest guardian family group protecting them. He didn't want to bring harm to any of the companions he had just gained. As such, lost in his grief and torment, he went by himself. At that time, although Tianya was only 16 years old, his body was terrifyingly strong and he was incredibly powerful. His rampage caused the 3 legendary bodyguard family groups to appear, as well as heavy armed forces. Tianya wore a set of black clothing and concealed his face, so no one discovered his true identity. He killed many people, but in the end, that family group was indeed the most powerful family group in China, and thus had incredibly heavy defenses. Tianya was able to kill many people, but also suffered heavy injuries, and was forced to leave. He was chased for an entire night, and lost much blood. At the end, he finally climbed up onto a train and passed out on top of it. Ling Chen closed his eyes, and said in a low voice, at that time, Tianya truly hated himself. If it wasn't for him, Jia Wu wouldn't have died. If it wasn't for that family group, Jia Wu wouldn't have died. However, that family group was much too powerful. He did not have the ability to take revenge for Jia Wu and himself. He thought back to the cold, cruel, painful days he had endured. Only Jia Wu was the single bit of warmth in his life. However, the heavens had even taken away this single bit of warmth. He didn't know whether he would be able to smile or laugh in future, or if his heart, which was becoming colder and colder, could become warm again. He thought that perhaps, from this day onwards, he would live only for revenge. However, deep in his heart, what he truly desired was the warmth of a real family. This was something that even someone with a cold heart subconsciously desired. One day, if he could meet a girl like Jia Wu, he would use his everything to protect her, and definitely would not allow the same thing to happen again. Shui Rua, when Tianya finally woke up, the train was still in motion. He had no idea where the train was traveling, but his body had recovered significantly, so he jumped off, and began walking. He didn't know where he was going, but he walked for a long, long time, until he reached a place where there were people living there. It seemed to be one of the outer suburbs of a city. After chatting with a few people passing by, he found out that this place was called Zhongzhou. Afterwards, he once again collapsed on the ground, until a very, very beautiful girl's voice woke him up. Ling Chen concluded his narration there. Ling Shui Rua covered her mouth, trying her best not to sob. However, her face was covered by her tears. Her father and mother smiled, but being mature adults, they thought this wouldn't be too good. However, because they loved their daughter dearly, they only smiled, but did not say anything. At that time, Ling Chen's body and mind had both taken much damage. Shui Ruo was like an angel who had saved him. Her voice, her smile all caused his frozen heart to grow warm. He, who had always been rejected by, and always rejected other people, could only nod his head. As such, he became Shui Ruo's big brother and stayed with the family. He had a father, mother, little sister, he had a family. This was the first time he had ever had a real family. In that family, he finally understood what family love was, which caused him to gradually forget about the pain and hatred in his heart. He even wanted to forget everything that happened in the past, and forever stay in this family, protecting Shui Ruo and her parents. How wonderful would that be? It was a pity that the heavens only allowed him to live this sort of peaceful, carefree life for 3 years. After 3 years, the father, who frequently came into contact with patients with Isrock disease, contracted the disease, and also passed it on to the mother and Shui Ruo. Only Ling Chen, who had a monstrous body that could not get sick, did not become infected. He decided to take care of this entire family by himself. After 1 year, the father and mother both passed away. In his life, there was only Shui Ruo left. In order to cure Shui Ruo, he went to countless places, looking for different ways to cure the disease. He even sent people all over the world to find the mad scientist who had disappeared, because he could easily cure the Isrock disease. However, after 3 years passed, he had made no progress. That was until they had come to Beijing, and met Yunfeng. "Big brother, why didn't you tell me all this earlier?" Ling Shui Ruo tightly hugged him as she sobbed. When she had first met him, she never knew that he had such a tragic past. At this moment, she finally knew that his past wasn't just tragic. He had suffered unimaginable pain and agony, something other people could not even imagine. Losing his mother when he was born, growing up in a bitter environment, being cruelly harmed by others, being buried alive, struggling to survive in the terrifying heaven and hell, then finding out that his most loved person had died. Those years, he had suffered much anguish and torment. Shui Ruo's heart hurt as if it had been shredded. The feeling in her heart was much more painful than even that from the Isrock disease. She pressed herself against him, and could not even speak as she sobbed. As her vision clouded, she could almost see her big brother in those scenes, desperately struggling against the pain in his heart, as the hatred and bitterness devoured him. She hated fate for being so cruel to him, hated that family group for doing such a thing to him, hated herself, for not being able to help him. Ling Chen laughed, and used his fingers to brush away Shui Ruo's stream of tears. He said in a comforting voice, "Don't cry, Ruo, these things all happened long ago in the past. Fate already gave me compensation for all that, by putting Ruo by my side. Being able to meet Ruo, I'm able to forgive God who put all those other things in my life. Because if it wasn't for those things, I never would have met Ruo, and neither would I have the power to protect Ruo. After meeting Ruo, I've been trying to forget about those things, and planned to never think of them again. I never thought that I'd talk about them again today, and even cause my Ruo to cry so much. Okay, Ruo, don't cry. If you keep crying, my heart will really break. Big brother. Woo." Shui Ruo was crying so hard that she couldn't speak. Even though everything was in the past, but her heart still hurt so much that she almost couldn't breathe. Phew, Ling Chen let out a breath, and stroked Shui Ruo's hair, waiting for her to calm down. After being with Shui Ruo, he really did try to forget about the past, and sealed Jia Wu away in his memories. He didn't even think of the hatred in his heart. As long as he had Shui Ruo, nothing else mattered. When Shui Ruo contracted the Isrock disease, he felt as if his whole world was collapsing, so to him, he would be willing to pay any price for her to become well again. As for the hatred, he didn't have the time or energy for that. However, with Shui Ruo now healthy again, his heart was no longer heavily burdened. Upon entering the mystic moon world, he had heard of the surname Long, and just like that, a small tongue of fire began to burn within Ling Chen's heart, igniting the hatred inside. As such, he started to plan how to take revenge against the Long family. Am I being a bit too greedy? I know that doing such a thing could disturb Ruo and my peaceful life together. The hatred that had kept him alive after being buried alive for 2 days, the hatred that had supported him in those 3 years in heaven, how could it be so easily forgotten? The hatred that he had been trying to suppress and forget had not been forgotten at all. Rather, it had been sleeping like a dormant monster in his heart. The slightest stimulation would cause it to awaken, unable to be contained. After a while, Shui finally began to calm down. She tightly hugged Ling Chen, wanting to be able to protect him. She blinked the tears out of her eyes as she sobbed, "Big brother, you still haven't told me why you suddenly became upset. Is it because you thought of those things from the past?" Ling Chen had told Shui everything, and he didn't want to hide anything from this girl who he wanted to be with forever, because the Sword Emperor. She might be Jia Wu, ah. Shui let out a cry of surprise, as her eyes widened in shock and surprise. Ling Chen slowly said, "Earlier when we fought, when our bodies touched, I accidentally found out that she is a woman, and that last sword technique she used, that sword technique was exactly the same as the one I created with Jia Wu. That sword technique let Jia Wu slash out many illusory blades while in the air, making her seem like a butterfly. It was very beautiful to look at, but it wasn't much more than that. It was much weaker than the 36 sword techniques passed down from her family group. We called that sword skill, Heaven's Edge, Butterfly's Dance, Tian Jia Wu. Back then, Jia Wu would often show me that skill, to let me appreciate the beauty of it. The skill that the Sword Emperor used was almost exactly the same as Jia Wu's, but with one difference: the Heaven's Edge, Butterfly's Dance of that year was incomparably beautiful, whereas the one the Sword Emperor used was unimaginably powerful, just like a proper sword skill. She's really, but, didn't she, already? In her shock, Shui forgot about crying, as her heart rate suddenly sped up. Ling Chen shook his head. "I don't know if it's her or not. Perhaps the sword skill was just similar, or maybe Jia Wu taught that skill, Heaven's Edge, Butterfly's Dance, to someone else. Maybe I'm just thinking too much. No, definitely not. That was something that only belonged to you two. How can she teach it to someone else?" Shui vigorously shook her head. "Big brother, at the time, why didn't you call her name? Why didn't you tell her who you were? That way, you would have known if she was big sister Jia Wu." "I couldn't." Ling Chen bitterly shook his head. "The Jia Wu in my heart already died 13 years ago. After suddenly finding out that she might still be alive, and might even be right in front of me, my emotions spun out of control. I didn't dare to call out her name, because if she wasn't Jia Wu, I would once again have to suffer that pain, but if it was her, if it really was, I wouldn't know what to do." Shui eyes became clouded again. Of course, she knew what Ling Chen meant by that. He wouldn't know what to do. "Is it because of me? Big brother's worried that if she really was Jia Wu, you wouldn't know how to face both of us, right?" Ruo, I said that I will be with you forever. Ruo will not leave me, and I will not leave Ruo. Ling Chen softly said. "Then, what if she's really big sister Jia Wu? When Big Brother was abandoned by everyone, she was determined not to leave you, and was even willing to become your wife. From that night, Big Sister Jia Wu was already Big Brother's wife, with the bright moon and stars as witnesses. If that really is Big Sister Jia Wu, how can Big Brother just abandon her, his own wife? She loved Big Brother so much, so I'm sure that she has always been waiting for Big Brother to come back, and has been waiting for many, many years." Ling Chen. Everything Shui had said was exactly correct. Back then, Ling Chen's world only had Jia Wu, so it would be impossible for him to just forget about him. Those 6 or 7 years at Heaven and Hell, he had thought of her every day. However, when he had returned, he had found out about her death. In his despair, he had met Shui. She had gradually healed his wounded heart, causing him to want to protect her forever. However, today he felt that Jia Wu was still alive, and was completely at a loss as to what he should do. When he was infected with the Isrock disease, Jia Wu was still willing to become his wife. She trained hard for his sake, and fasted to death for him. He would never allow himself to hurt her. However, how could he hurt Shui Ruo either? Seeing the confusion in Ling Chen's eyes, Shui Ruo completely understood why Ling Chen would suddenly become upset. No, he wasn't upset, knowing that Jia Wu might still be alive. He must be incredibly happy in his heart. Instead, what was making him feel conflicted was probably guilt. Guilt that although Jia Wu had been alive, he had not found her, guilt that he had been with another girl for such a long time. As such, he didn't dare to see if it was her, because he felt that he didn't have the right, nor the courage to face her. Moreover, he was also afraid that it wasn't her, and even if it was, he wouldn't know what to do. If he was together with Jia Wu, he would have to let down Shui Ruo, and if he was with Shui Ruo, he would have to let down Jia Wu. Big brother, did you know, you're a big idiot. Shui Ruo wiped away her tears, and rested her head on his shoulder as she quietly spoke. Ruo Ruo. Ruo Ruo, who was sobbing before, gave a gentle laugh. She stretched out her hands, and put them against Ling Chen's mouth, softly saying, "Big brother, let's talk about this later, alright? I'm a bit hungry, so can Big brother make some desserts? I haven't had any desserts made by Big brother in a long time." "Sure." Ling Chen nodded, and stroked Shui Ruo's face, then walked out of the room. Shui Ruo continued to gaze at Ling Chen as he walked out, then closed her eyes, with her hands clasped on her chest. Within her heart, she said, "Big brother, I always believed that you were an angel sent by heaven. You turned every day of my life into heaven. Only today did I find out that Big brother has suffered so much in the past. When I was in total despair, Big brother refused to leave me, and help me through that period, but when Big brother was in despair, I wasn't there to help him. Big brother, now that you know big sister Jia Wu who you love might still be alive, isn't that wonderful? Before, it was always Big brother protecting me, letting me live a happy life. In future, I will use my everything to help Big brother to forget about all of the tragic things that happened in the past. I never want to be the reason for Big brother becoming unhappy. I will definitely give my all to make Big brother the happiest person in the world. As long as Big brother is happy, I will definitely be happy as well. Even the Isrock disease couldn't separate us, so as long as we're together, what is there that can't be accepted? Big sister Jia Wu, you feel the same, right?" As she opened her eyes, Shui Ruo smiled. She took off her gaming equipment, put on her slippers, and walked out of the bedroom. "Big brother, I'm going to have a shower." Shui Ruo knew that Ling Chen's cooking skills were incredible. There was practically nothing that he could not make, and back then Shui Ruo's parents praised his meals every time. Perhaps this was one of the reasons why they allowed him, a complete stranger, to continue living with them. These cooking skills were developed in hell, because using delicious food to kill unsuspecting victims was very efficient. While making the desserts, he heard the sound of water flowing in the bathroom. Shui Ruo would have a shower every day, to keep herself completely clean. After he finished making the desserts, he carefully placed and arranged them on the table. Seeing his creation, he smiled to himself, confident that Ruo Ruo would like it. "Ruo Ruo, the desserts are ready, have you finished showering?" Hearing that the water had stopped, Ling Chen called out. Just as Ling Chen spoke, the bathroom door opened, and a snow-white, exquisite figure walked out. Shui Ruo's eyes shone like stars as they gazed at him, and she smiled, revealing an extremely cute but alluring smile. Ling Chen felt as if an electric current had passed through his body, causing his body to be frozen in place. His eyes were locked onto Shui Ruo's body, unable to move away. Shui Ruo had walked out without any clothes on, and the only thing that she had on was a small towel. Her delicate hands were holding the towel in place, and below it, Ling Chen could see her jade-white, slender legs. The towel could not fully cover her ample breasts, revealing a wondrous sight. Shui Ruo's tender cheeks were red, and her eyes were fixed on Ling Chen. She bewitchingly smiled, and let go of the towel, letting it fall to the ground. Ling Chen, Shui Ruo's flawless body was completely displayed to Ling Chen, causing him to stop breathing. It felt as if he had forgotten how to speak, or even make a sound. Her large breasts were like a pair of flowers, waiting for him to go and pick them, and grasp them in his hands. Her slim waist and beautiful legs all seemed to be inviting him. Although he had seen Shui Ruo's body many times, but in that instant, he was completely mesmerized by the scene. Shui Ruo's cheeks became redder, and her hands moved down her body from her shoulders to her legs as she quietly asked, "Big brother, does my body look nice?" Look nice? No one would believe that there would be anything more beautiful in the world. Ling Chen dumbly nodded his head. He moved his lips as he spluttered out, "Ruo Ruo, you, catch a cold." Ling Shui Ruo's lips parted into a sweet smile, clearly amused by her big brother's flustered reaction. She stepped over the towel, and walked towards the dazed Ling Chen, leaning her body against his, "Big brother, before eating desserts, do you want to eat Ruo Ruo first?" Ruo Ruo wants to become Big Brother's favorite dessert. Shui Ruo extended her arm around Ling Chen's neck, pulling him close and kissed him. The first time they had kissed was when Shui Ruo was 13. That time, it was also Shui Ruo taking the initiative to kiss him. If it wasn't for Shui Ruo making the first move, Ling Chen definitely would not be willing to ruin the innocence of this pure angel. This sort of seductive gestures and language, as well as that perfect body, could cause any man to lose his sanity. Their lips were joined together as Ling Chen desperately tried to quell the burning passion in his heart. He hugged Shui Ruo's body, and greedily sucked on her lips, using his tongue to explore her mouth. Shui Ruo let out a gentle woo sound, and she raised her head, passionately reciprocating. The warm breath from her nostrils blew on Ling Chen's face. She was completely enraptured within Ling Chen's embrace, as if she was drunk. Ling Chen's breathing became more and more erratic and heated. He pressed his hand against her breasts, greedily rubbing, his other hand passing over her sleek waist, the grabbing onto her bottom, causing Shui Ruo to let out a small cry of ecstasy. She furrowed her brows, biting her lips as her face increasingly reddened, feeling those groping hands on her breasts and bottom. In her excitement, she opened her eyes, dumbly gazing at Ling Chen as her head spun with euphoria. She stretched out her hands into his clothes, feeling the warmth of his body. Gradually, one of her hands traveled downwards, touching a burning hot area, gently grabbing and nervously stroking it with her fingers. Although this was only the seduction of a young woman, Ling Chen's passion and lust burned brighter than ever before. Their mouths were still pressed together, and their bodies trembled as their pleasure increased. The gentle and reserved Shui Ruo, at this moment, was using up all of the courage in her body. Finally, Ling Chen could not take it anymore, and carried the gasping Shui Ruo onto the sofa, gently spreading out her legs. He lay down, his chest pressed down on her body. "Ruo Ruo, big brother, quickly eat me up." The mysterious lock was broken in one thrust, and it gradually became darker as evening fell. A cry of pleasure, mixed with pain, sounded out from the room, filling the air. Shui Ruo tightly wrapped her arms around Ling Chen, who was above her, and wrapped her slender legs around his waist. Her skin was red, and covered in much sweat. Although it was painful, it was incredibly pleasurable, and she smiled in her joy. "Big brother, I've finally become yours completely. And even earlier than big sister Diawu." One of Long Tianyun's fingers tapped on the table in front of him. The sudden sound caused everyone's hearts to jump. Long Tianyun raised his head, his gaze calm like water. He muttered in a low voice, "Having the guts to kill me in public, having the power to defeat Xiaoyu," and his voice sounds young enough to be less than 30 years old. In my memory, I can't think of a single person. Young master, that person Ling Tian has not been part of the virtual world for very long, so he must not know you, or our Yan Huang Alliance's fame and reputation. He must have unknowingly done this, unknowingly. Long Tian Yun laughed coldly. Under heavy defense, I was killed twice, and 137 other people were killed. You call this unknowingly? If this was not in a game, but in the real world, would be more dead than dead. All of the people present were at a loss for words, their bodies covered in cold sweat and heads hung down in shame, unable to say even a word. Apart from the Sword Emperor and Flame Emperor who were always by Long Tian Yun's side, there was also a group of experts, as well as the thousands of other Yan Huang Alliance players present. They were all there to protect Long Tian Yun, as well as keep the situation under control if anything happened. However, they had allowed Ling Tian to kill Long Tian Yun twice in such a short period of time, and even let him escape. This had never, ever happened before. To them, to the entire Yan Huang Alliance, this was a complete and utter humiliation. By now, what had happened at the Plains District was being talked about everywhere. Ling Chen was being described more and more like a god, whereas the Yan Huang Alliance had become a stepping stone. Forget it, Long Tian Yun stood up and flicked his wrist. This wasn't entirely your fault. Even I didn't expect Ling Tian to be so strong, that he could completely dominate Xiaoyu. There wasn't anything strange about you all not being able to stop him. Flame Shadow walked forwards and said, "Please rest assured, young master, we'll find Ling Tian's real identity within 3 days. Moreover, our Yan Huang Alliance definitely will not endure this silently. I've already prepared to pass down a kill on-site command for the entire Yan Huang Alliance targeting Ling Tian. What is your view, young master? Send out the command. Once you find Ling Tian, destroy him at all costs. Also, arrange some people to keep an eye on the revival center. Once Ling Tian appears, immediately notify the guild. TLN, teleport scrolls teleport you to the revival center. Moreover, because our Yan Huang Alliance has not been officially established yet, we don't have a guild channel for communication and management. As such, guild members can join or leave as they wish. After all, today's events will cause many people to leave. The most important thing right now is to find that Peter Pan, and then establish the Yan Huang Alliance as soon as possible. I understand, Flame Shadow nodded. The Dark Knight has already accepted this request, and they will have results soon. There's another matter regarding Ling Tian. Speak. Long Tian Yun coldly replied. Flame Shadow took a step forwards, and earnestly said, Young Master already knows that Ling Tian seems to be quite close with the big miss of the Yun family, the princess of the Battle Alliance, as well as the Su family's princess. Moreover, it seems that Ling Tian has already decided to join the big miss of the Yun family's guild, Heart's Dream. The frozen-hearted man-eater, Mu Bingyao, has already joined, as well as another person, a young girl, who seems very close to Ling Tian, perhaps his relative. That girl also wears a mask, just like Ling Tian, and no one has ever seen her true appearance before. Have you found Ling Tian's reason for helping Meng Xian? Long Tian Yun asked. He was certain that before Mystic Moon was released, Yun Meng Xian and Ling Tian did not know each other, otherwise he would have known. However, Long Tian Yun did not know how they met, or why Ling Tian was willing to help her. We've indeed received some information about his reasons. Flame Shadow thought for a short while, then hesitatingly said, Alliance Master Zhao's little sister is also part of that guild, and I earlier asked Alliance Master Xiao about this. He said that including his little sister, no one has ever seen Ling Tian's face, and none of them know about his true background. As for him joining Heart's Dream and wanting to help the big miss of the Yun family, it's because what? Spit it out. Long Tian Yun frowned. Because Ling Tian fell in love with the big miss of the Yun family at first sight, and afterwards found out about the matter between young master and her. As such, He wanted to help her fulfill her bet with her father, in exchange for her marrying him afterwards, and she agreed, bastard. Long Tian Yun yelled out, causing Flame Shadow to quickly lower his head and stop speaking. Long Tian Yun's hands were tightly clenched, his face twisted. Ling Tian, from today onwards, either you die, or I die. Everyone present knew that this time, Long Tian Yun was truly furious towards Ling Tian, although he was already quite furious before. It could be said that before Ling Tian, the big miss of the Yun family was the first time Long Tian Yun had ever failed. With his long family background, power, looks, ability, who wasn't he good enough for? As such, he had extremely high taste. There was only one woman who he was satisfied with, and that was Yun Meng Xian. Yun Meng Xian's looks were indeed peerless. Anyone who saw her would think that she was some sort of goddess that had come down to earth. Even when Yun Meng Xian was younger, after seeing her once, Long Tian Yun was unable to forget her, let alone the current her. However, Yun Meng Xian had actually rejected him harshly. This was known by everyone in the upper echelons of the society in Beijing, causing Long Tian Yun to lose much face. However, he refused to give up. Because the Yun family would do anything to gain the favor of the Long family, ordinarily, Yun Meng Xian's refusal would not have meant much. As such, the almost impossible bet between Yun Meng Xian and her father came to be. Long Tian Yun did not at all doubt what Flame Shadow had said. Ling Tian and Yun Meng Xian did not even know each other, so the only reason for him helping her would be this. Even he, Long Tian Yun, could not resist Yun Meng Xian's looks, let alone other people. He believed that any man who saw Yun Meng Xian would forget everything, and be willing to do anything for her. Long Tian Yun ground his teeth as he suddenly realized why this Ling Tian, who he had never met before, was so determined to ruin him. It was all to gain Yun Meng Xian's favor. He was simply going too far. If he, Long Tian Yun, saw the woman he wanted being taken by Ling Tian as well, that would be the greatest humiliation of his life. Long Tian Yun's eyes narrowed. You want to fight me for Meng Xian? I want to see how you're going to help her rival the Yun family's fame and fortune in just 2 years, or how you'll even live to that day. Immediately send out a kill on-sight command to the entire guild targeting Ling Tian. Additionally, keep an eye on Meng Xian's actions. I want to meet her. Remember, don't let her find out, and don't disturb her either. Xiao Qiu Feng's lie was quite ingenious, because he understood Long Tian Yun quite well, and knew what he would lose his cool over. This way, he prevented Long Tian Yun from finding out the real reason why Ling Tian was helping Yun Meng Xian, keeping the Yun family siblings as well as Ling Tian and his sister, Xiao Qi and Sui from getting into much trouble. As for Ling Tian, he had not even seen what Yun Meng Xian really looked like, and didn't seem to be too interested anyways. Whenever Yun Meng Xian was with him, she would always be covering her face, whether it was out of habit or out of caution. Ling Chen hugged Shui Rua as they lay in the bathtub, enjoying the pleasant, relaxing feeling of the warm water. Shui Rua lay on Ling Chen's chest, without even a bit of energy in her body. Ling Chen's hands would occasionally touch some sensitive spots on her body, causing her to let out small moans. Big brother, Shui Rua's voice was incredibly soft, just like her body. In contrast, Ling Chen's body was much too strong, and even though he was controlling himself, doing his best to be gentle, Shui Rua was still completely drained after their session, and almost fainted afterwards. She gently said, "Mum said that you should only do this sort of thing with your husband. Does this mean I'm Big Brother's wife now?" Ling Chen smiled. "In my heart, Rua has always been my wife." "I know. I can feel Big Brother's heart beating right now." Rua closed her eyes, enjoying the feeling of her skin pressed against Ling Chen's. However, Big Sister Jia Wu is also Big Brother's wife. Ling Chen, Shui Rua felt the hands roaming around on her body suddenly freeze, and she giggled, "Big Brother, now you have 2 wives, are you not happy?" Ling Chen was dumbfounded, and at a loss for words. Ruo, big brother, I know, you're afraid of letting down either me or big sister Dia Wu. Shui Ruo cut him off, slowly saying, in reality, big brother's really dumb. Did you forget that during those years when I had the Isrock disease, big brother did not leave me at all, and put me first? At that time, I wanted to get better so badly, so that I can do so many things with big brother. As long as big brother is happy, I will be happy as well. Now that I've completely recovered, big brother is still with me. As long as big brother doesn't leave me, and as long as big brother is happy, I will be the happiest person in the world. Big brother should be really happy, having found big sister Dia Wu whom he loves so much. I'm also very happy, and I definitely won't get jealous or sad, or fight with big sister Dia Wu, because I know that even if big brother has big sister Dia Wu, he won't leave me. If we can bring big sister Dia Wu back someday, I know I'll definitely get along well with her, and thank her for being so good to big brother back then. I'll listen to her and take care of big brother with her, the three of us living together, wouldn't that be perfect? Ling Chen. I believe that big sister Dia Wu would be willing as well. If that really is big sister Dia Wu, she must have been waiting for such a long time. After all those years, she finally found her big brother Tian. I'm sure she would feel the same way as me. After going through so many things, how could we be like other girls who care about such petty things at the cost of big brother's unhappiness? Oh, and if big brother likes any other girls, you can bring them over as well. Because as long as big brother likes that girl, it means that that girl is truly good to big brother, so I'll like her as well. Shui Ruo closed her eyes with a blissful smile on her face, looking even more pure and beautiful than a snow lotus from a celestial mountain. Ling Chen repeatedly blinked, unable to say anything. Big brother, you suffered so much all those years, so you should have suitable compensation. You should be allowed to have happiness that other men can't have. I will do my best to make big brother become the happiest man in the world. That way, I'll become the happiest girl in the world. The woman turned off the screen, and muttered that name. She slowly stood up, and under the light from outside the window illuminated her hair, revealing a red glow. I finally found you. This time, I won't let you escape. Forgotten continent. It was already quite late, and Shao Qi, Su'er, Mu Bingyao had already gone offline. Yunmeng Xian continued to train in the plains region by herself. Because she was quite an independent person, just because someone strong like Ling Tian helped her, she wouldn't casually relax. Since she was young, she knew that the only person she could rely on was herself. Although she was a woman, she definitely would not allow this to become an excuse for her to be weak, even if it was in terms of battle power. The profession and weapons Ling Tian gave her provided her with a good foundation, but even so, she wouldn't allow herself to grow complacent. The Phantasmal Blade Dancer class was originally created by a woman, so the skills were all especially beautiful. However, despite being beautiful and aesthetic, the skills were still powerful and deadly. As Yunmeng Xian danced with her twin swords, her body spun and her clothes fluttered in the wind. From afar, it looked as if there was a beautiful celestial dancing. Long Tianyun stood far away, gazing at the scene. His subordinates did the same, their eyes glued on the elegant figure in the distance. A gust of cold wind blew past, and they shivered as they lowered their heads. This was the woman who the young master had his eyes on. Even if they had 100 times their courage, they wouldn't dare to have any thoughts about her. Clap! 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 Long Tianyun clapped, as he walked forwards, exclaiming loudly, "So it was you, Meng Xian. I just knew that apart from you, there would not be anyone else in this world who could look so beautiful." Long Tianyun's voice caused Yunmeng Xian to frown. She put away her twin swords, and turned around, calmly saying, "Long Tianyun, it's you." Naturally, she didn't believe that Long Tianyun appearing here was a mere coincidence. "Meng Xian, you can call me Big Brother Yun, just like you did when we were younger. It sounds much more affectionate that way." Long Tian Yun said while smiling. Yun Meng Xian did not reply, instead saying, "It's already late. I need to rest, so if you have anything to say, please say it now." Yun Meng Xian's coldness caused Long Tian Yun to sigh. "Meng Xian, we haven't seen each other for a while now. I know that you've been consciously avoiding me. Today, I just have some things that I want to ask you. I won't waste too much of your time. You should know that I would never do anything to make you unhappy." After speaking, he turned around, and signaled his subordinates. The people behind him all immediately retreated far away. Facing Meng Xian's coldness, he instead decided to be calm and gentle. The only person who could make Long Tian Yun like this was Yun Meng Xian. After seeing Yun Meng Xian's beauty, any person would understand this. Yun Meng Xian knew that Long Tian Yun was someone who never gave up until he got what he wanted. She could already guess what Long Tian Yun wanted to ask her. As such, she calmly asked, "What is it?" Long Tian Yun nodded, saying, "Meng Xian is extremely intelligent, so I'm sure you can already guess I want to ask. Indeed, I want to ask something about Ling Tian. Recently, I've heard that Ling Tian and Meng Xian have been quite close, and that he has already decided to join Meng Xian's heart's dream. Yun Meng Xian, I know Ling Tian came to help Meng Xian reject me, haha." Long Tian Yun laughed self-mockingly. "Meng Xian must be unhappy with me asking about these things, I believe. However, Meng Xian should know that Ling Tian is now my enemy. Many of the things he did went past my bottom line. Meng Xian should know the sorts of things I absolutely cannot stand. So, I want to know what the relationship is between Meng Xian and Ling Tian. If I moved against Ling Tian, what would be Meng Xian's reaction?" Yun Meng Xian raised her eyebrows. Long Tian Yun didn't ask her about Ling Tian's background. It seemed that he already understood that she did not know either. After thinking for a short while, she expressionlessly replied, "You can do whatever you want. I'm just a powerless woman who can be ignored. Why would my opinion matter? How could I prevent Alliance Master Long from acting against someone?" Long Tian Yun laughed as he shook his head. As long as Meng Xian wanted it, countless men would risk their lives for Meng Xian. How can this be called powerless? Alright, since Meng Xian doesn't seem to care too much about this, then I won't need to hold back in dealing with Ling Tian. By the way, Meng Xian, this Ling Tian's background is unknown, and seems to be a shady character. It's best if you're careful around him. This sort of person would never help someone else for free. I already know what his purpose is. It's getting late, so if you don't have anything to say, I'll be leaving." After speaking, she turned, preparing to leave. Long Tian Yun sighed again. "I know that he's helping you so that he can have you. If he can help you win your bet, you'll marry him. And I know that you've already agreed." Yun Meng Xian stopped walking. A look of confusion appeared on her face, but it quickly disappeared. She replied, "With your intelligence-gathering skills, there isn't anything that can be hidden from you. Since you already know anything, why did you still come to ask?" Long Tian Yun inhaled, then spoke in a hurt tone. "Ling Tian is indeed quite powerful. I know very well that powerful men tend to attract women. However, Meng Xian, in order to reject me, you actually agreed to such a request of someone whose background isn't even known. Do you really despise me that much?" "I don't have any reason to despise you." Yun Meng Xian shook her head. "What I want is the freedom to decide my own fate. If Ling Tian is able to help me escape from your chains, then I would agree to anything." Long Tian Yun raised his head, and slowly exhaled while looking at the sky, then lowered his head. He spoke as he gazed at Yun Meng Xian from behind. "Meng Xian, I've never forced you before, though I may have unintentionally given you some pressure. However, one day, Meng Xian, you will understand how I feel towards you, and understand that in this world, I am the only one good enough for you. No one else has the qualifications to have you, including Ling Tian. Even if you're not happy about it, I will definitely prevent the deal between you and Ling Tian. After speaking, Long Tian Yun turned to leave. Yun Meng Xian stood where she was, then suddenly turned around after a few seconds, saying, Long Tian Yun, there's one thing that you're right about, powerful men attract women. This applies to me as well. The only men I like are those who are strong and powerful. In my eyes, at least right now, Ling Tian is much more powerful than you. After all, at least half of your power comes from your family. In contrast, Ling Tian's power comes purely from himself. This is something that you cannot deny. If you want me to marry you, your own power needs to be at least greater than his. Using other people, or low-handed tricks will only make me look down on you. Long Tianyun stopped walking, and clenched his fists tightly. The only girl he had ever had his eyes on had actually said that he was far inferior to another man. This caused Long Tianyun, who had always arrogantly stood above everyone else, to experience a sour feeling in his heart. His body tensed, and he didn't reply, continuing to walk into the distance. Yun Meng Xian had also disappeared. She wondered where Long Tianyun had received this information from. Ling Tian, now that the Yan Huang Alliance has issued a kill-on-sight command for you, you have to stay hidden. The Yan Huang Alliance will definitely be keeping an eye on the revival centers of major towns and cities, so make sure you disguise yourself if you use teleport scrolls. As soon as Ling Chen logged on, he was bombarded with a series of warnings and reminders from Yun Feng. Ling Chen casually replied, "Isn't that as expected? Don't worry, it's not that easy to find me. Even if they do, it's no big deal, it'll just result in a bunch of their people dying." Ling Chen was probably the only person who could be so arrogant towards a kill-on-sight order from the Yan Huang Alliance. Yun Feng continued to remind him, "Just remember to be careful." Ling Chen didn't pay too much mind to Yun Feng's warnings and reminders. After all, there wasn't a need to, as he would now be heading towards the Vermillion Bird City in the south, in order to find hope for Xiling. From this day, he would head south. Opening the map of the Forgotten Continent, Ling Chen quickly found where the Vermillion Bird City on the map was. He calculated the distance between the Azure Dragon City and the Vermillion Bird City, then his average speed and playing time per day. If everything went well, he would reach Vermillion Bird City in about a month. After all, the Forgotten Continent was extremely vast, and going from the Azure Dragon City to the Vermillion Bird City would cover a distance of over 1/3 of the entire Forgotten Continent. Xiling could still hold on for a maximum of 2 months. Because it was very likely that his arrival at the Vermillion Bird City would be delayed by various factors, realistically, it would take him over a month to reach it. Moreover, he would also have to spend time looking for the Vermillion Bird itself. Ling Chen closed the map, and started to take action. He first went to the mayor's residence, and returned the gold he had borrowed, taking back the title deed for the land. He also asked about whether other players had inquired about buying or leasing that piece of land, and he was very satisfied with the mayor's answer. Afterwards, Ling Chen went to the auction house to consign a few items, then walked out of Azure Dragon City, called out his cloud-stepping mare and rode towards the south. The words Shui Rua had earlier said to him erased all internal conflict in his heart. However, he did not go to find the Sword Emperor to confirm if she was indeed Xianyuan Jia Wu or not. In contrast, he decided at least for this period of time, he would temporarily forget about this whole affair. It definitely wasn't because he no longer felt anything towards Jia Wu. Rather, 13 years had passed, and too many things had changed. First of all, he had to make sure that she really was Jia Wu, and know about her situation. If she wasn't Jia Wu, going to meet her would only expose himself. If she was Jia Wu, after 13 years, whether she was still the girl that he loved, as well as whether she still cared about things back then were unknown. After Meng Xian and the other girls logged on, Ling Chen used his communication device to explain to them his plan about going to the Vermillion Bird City. Yun Meng Xian did not tell him about the things Long Tian Yun had said the previous night, but because of those things, when meeting him, her heartbeat seemed to be a bit different from usual. Ling Chen originally planned to go together with Shui Rua, but Shao Qi and the others adamantly refused. Shui Rua was their only healer and support, so they were unwilling to let her go. In the end, Ling Chen could only give up and go by himself. After leaving in the morning, Ling Chen continuously headed towards the south, except for a short break at lunchtime. He spent most of the time telling Ling'er stories. He didn't actually know many stories suitable for children, so in the end, he had to make up quite a few. Some of them didn't make sense at all, and yet Ling'er was still very happy with them. Sitting on the cloud-stepping mare's head, with her arms around a doll, she stared at him unblinkingly as she listened. After a whole day of telling stories, Ling Chen's mouth was completely parched, and his voice was nearly gone. However, this effort was not in vain, as Ling'er's favorability towards him had increased by +5. Ling Chen found out that the greater Ling'er's favorability towards him was, the harder it was to increase it any further. Who knew how many months or years it would take to reach 50? If he wanted to reach the 100 of the legends, never mind, that was much too far-fetched. Currently, he was seriously considering if he should buy a whole stack of children's books to read to Ling'er. When Ling Chen logged on at night, he appeared where he had previously logged off, the Fields region, the territory of the furious scarecrows. He opened the player level rankings, and found that the players below him were rapidly closing in on him. For the entire day, he had been traveling, and had not killed a single monster. This was fine for a day or two, but if he continued going like this, he would be left behind in the player level rankings. Although levels were not too important, he, who had monopolized all of the top rankings, did not want to fall out of the top rankings. Looks like every day I'll have to squeeze out a few hours to farm monsters, Ling Chen said to himself. He opened his stats page and saw that he had 6,270 SP. All of this came from the Forest of Bones and the Moon God Ruins. He then looked at his skills, trying to decide what he should spend his SP on. Before, he spent most of his SP on passive skills. Apart from the Four Corners Star Formation, he had not leveled up any active skills before. After much deliberation, Ling Chen spent 2,000 SP on the War God technique. A light flashed, and the War God technique was leveled up to LV3. War God technique, current level, LV3, highest level, LV10, SP required to upgrade to LV4 3000. Powerful battle technique originating from War God's soul force, after practice it can greatly increase personal attack strength permanently. Effect, strength increases by 3*x points, physical attack strength increased by 7*x, x equals current level. After leveling up the War God technique, Ling Chen's base physical attack power immediately increased by almost 80 points. The War God technique's level scaled very well with its power. Even in the late stages of the game, it would still be an incredibly powerful passive skill. With his remaining SP, Ling Chen leveled up 3 of his active skills. He leveled up Ling Tian Slash and Ling Tian Burst from LV2 to LV5, and the Four Corners Star Formation from LV3 to LV5. In the end, he still had 770 SP remaining, so he decided to level up Ling Tian Slash to LV6. Ling Tian Slash, current level, LV6, highest level, LV10, SP required to upgrade to LV7, 1000. Using the weapon in the hand to attack a single enemy, suddenly releasing the strength of the battle's soul the instant you hit the enemy, dealing devastating damage towards the opponent. Effect, single target attack, damage is equal to 260% of regular attacks, critical hit chance plus 10%, 5% chance of stunning for 3 to 5 seconds, very big chance of pushing back the target. MP consumption, 20 cooldown time, 0, Ling Tian Burst, current level, LV5, highest level, LV10, SP required to upgrade to LV6, 700. pouring the battle soul power into the weapon, instantly releasing it when slashing forward, creating a power explosion in a small area, attacking all targets in a 6-meter area in front. Damage is equal to 150% of regular attacks. MP consumption. 30 cooldown time. 0. For corners star formation. Current level, LV5. Highest level, LV10. SP required to upgrade to LV6, 1500. Using the power of the battle soul to sweep the surroundings, instantly forming a formation of destruction in a 10-meter radius around yourself. The raging battle soul power will deal devastating damage towards all targets within the formation. Damage is equal to 500% of regular damage, critical hit rate plus 10%, 100% chance to trigger knockback. MP consumption, 100 cooldown time, 60 seconds. All 3 attacks had been significantly improved after leveling up. This was especially so for Ling Tian Burst, with its AoE increasing from 5 meters to 6 meters. His skills all required large amounts of SP, but because of his massive gains in SP, it did not take long for him to level up his skills. After leveling up his skills, he only had a pitiful 70 SP left. He equipped the Great Ravager and Zephyr Blade, and looked at his overall stats. Player, Ling Tian level, LV18 profession, Ling Tian battle soul affiliations, none fame points, 14013 money, 136,201,782 SP, 70 primary attributes, strength, 241 constitution, 41 agility, 25 spirit, 35 innate attributes, luck, 11 comprehension, 11 HP, 1177 MP, 710 physical attack power, 1088 magic attack power, 70 physical defense, 215 hit. Evasion, 35 critical chance, 31% pierce chance. Attack speed, 100 movement speed, 143 elemental resistances, water, 0% fire, 0%, no bonus from Ling, wind, 10% lightning, 0% earth, 5% light, 0% darkness, 18%. Skills, personal skills, scan, cannot be leveled up, soul sacrifice, LV3, heaven wine technique, LV4, item manipulation technique, LV4 profession skills, Ling Tian battle soul, war god technique, LV3, Ling Tian slash, LV6, Ling Tian burst, LV5, for corners star formation, LV5, battle soul possession, LV2. Equipment skills, Zephyr, 1000 kg rend, equipment, weapons, right hand, Great Ravager, double-handed blunt weapon, left hand, Zephyr Blade, double-handed sword, Lunar Chain, Lunar Scourge, Gemini Orb, Sagittarius Orb, Cancer Orb, Heartless Orb, Elementary Defense Crystal, Elementary Speed Crystal, Wind Chasing Stone, Darkness Crystal, Intermediate Strength Crystal, Intermediate Speed Crystal, Head, Wine Chaser Bandana Mask, Normal Mask Necklace, White Bone Pendant Earrings, none. Rings, Nimble Ring, for Spirit Ring Insignia, Proof of Courage, Consonance Insignia Upper Body, Dark Chest Plate Belt, none Lower Body, Purple Crystal Amour, Lower, Cloak, Ghost Cloak Handguard, Skeleton Gloves Shoes, Wind Riding Boots Pets, Xiao Hui, Holy Spirit Beast, Shi Ling, Crimson Spirit, Ling Air. Ling Tian battle soul was purely focused on attack. His attack power was now nearly as high as his HP. Evidently, this wasn't very balanced. Ling Chen slowly walked into the LV-30 Furious Scarecrow territory. A scarecrow immediately appeared and jumped towards him. Ling Chen casually glanced at its stats, and did not dodge, rather sweeping a Ling Tian slash towards it with the Great Ravager. Bam! Minus 3,399. The scarecrow that had not even come close to Ling Tian was sent flying. With his absolute hit and pierce, as well as ignoring defense, LV-18 Ling Chen fighting normal LV-30 monsters could be described with just 2 words: complete annihilation. Being the political center and one of the busiest cities in China, naturally, there would be a variety of ladies in this city. However, there were few that could match Shui Ruo's beauty, and everyone who saw her would immediately be stunned by her natural angel-likeness. Her smile was capable of melting any heart. Her pupils glistened like crystals and her tender face was beautiful beyond description. She was almost like an artwork come to life. Her purity and beauty did not belong to this world, and the dirty air around her only tainted her. Along the way, Shui Ruo caught the attention of many. They were all stunned and marveled by her looks. This meant the jealousy of many girls, whereas Ling Chen received mostly envious looks from the guys. However, they were both very used to this, as she had been more beautiful than others even as a child. Even her parents had joked about her beauty being disastrous. "Brother, I think that's all I want to buy. Let's go for a walk, okay?" "Sure." He held on to her hand as they walked towards home. In the distance, a fat guy picked up his phone and directed its camera towards Shui Ruo. A light snap could barely be heard coming from the camera. Ling Chen glared in that direction but continued walking. As the fatty was about to put his phone away, someone came along and knocked his phone out of his hand and onto the ground. He then continued walking and stepping on the phone as he went. Whether it was because of the quality of the phone, or just because the person had impressive leg strength, the phone shattered into pieces where he stood on it. The fatty was about to act on his fury before the person stopped and turned around to look at him. It was such a hot day, but he was wearing a black cap. The fatty was faced with a guy full of ferocious scars on his face. They were a pair of triangular eyes, not unlike that of a viper. With these eyes glaring at him, the fatty couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Almost as if something was on his throat, breathing became uncomfortable. "Sorry," the mysterious man apologized with a sharp look, as if he were about to stab into the fatty. It's okay," and without even picking up the pieces of his phone, the fatty turned and left as quickly as possible, almost tripping in his attempt to do so. Watching him, the man let out a cold chuckle before he walked slowly back into the crowd. Up ahead, a soft hustling sound could be heard. Soon enough, the source of the sound became visible. A wine-red maglev, magnetic levitation, sports car was moving with pretty fast speed. This was supposed to be one of the biggest pedestrians-only streets in Beijing, which meant that cars were not allowed in. A sports car coming in would therefore cause a disturbance. However, in this world, the rules were very flexible, and as long as you had enough money and power, they pretty much didn't apply to you. Someone who had the guts to drive a car in here obviously had to be someone of great background. The maglev sports car only supported this. Already being quite advanced, a maglev sports car was considered a luxury item. Even in Beijing, there were only a couple of people rich enough to drive one of those. The maglev car slowed down and stopped a few meters in front of Ling Chen, where the main entrance was located. Shui Ruo smiled, exclaiming, "Brother, look, what a beautiful car." "Indeed it is beautiful," Ling Chen nodded and thought to himself if he should buy one for her. But he would have to teach her how to drive first. 3 more luxury business cars followed after the maglev sports car. They were escorting the sports car and covering up the busiest walkway in the city. Everyone started to chatter, wondering who it was that was able to hold such a spectacle. The doors opened and a long and beautiful leg came out of the car door. It was a girl that appeared, taking off her sunglasses and throwing them back into the car as she stepped out. Most men thereafter diverted their attention away from the car and onto the women that. She was merely a girl of 16 or 17 years, at the peak of her beauty. Face as tender as snow, bright red lips, a charming nose and a pair of starlight eyes underneath black eyelashes. The combination of all this created a look that could charm hundreds and thousands of men. She had smooth skin, a vibrant appearance, and uniquely lively, youthful aura. The fitting light blue sleeveless t-shirt she wore revealed her snow-white shoulders, and complemented her S-shaped, curvy body. As for her legs, she wore long, bleached skinny jeans that served well to emphasize their length. She was only so young, but appeared to have matured already. She possessed such an attractive body and was able to bring out the lust in many men without even thinking about it. A faint smile complemented her lively and youthful charm but couldn't hide her natural noble background. Coincidentally bumping into Shao-Chi in the real world was a good thing. The Shao-Chi before his eyes was no longer the long-robed elementalist he was used to. Although they could tell that it was Shao-Chi, she may not recognize them as she had never seen them in real world. That being said, Ling Shui Ruo's appearance was just too hard to ignore. If she was to be noticed by this young mistress, it could bring trouble. So he directed Shui Ruo in a different direction and continued walking. Being able to have the attention of everyone was a usual thing for Princess Xiao. She closed the door and walked towards the shopping entrance. Behind her were several men on full alert, dressed in black suits, black sunglasses and carrying invisible microphones. Their appearance screamed bodyguard. Their footsteps behind her made her turn around. With a fierce look that was unfortunately too cute to be threatening, she demanded, "Didn't I say I only want 3 men? Why did so many come? It's just, we're worried. Seriously. I am just here to buy some things. All I needed were 2 men to hold things and 1 to look after the car. Why did so many people follow me to go shopping? You come with me, the rest of you look after the car and don't follow me." Yes ma'am, they didn't dare defy Princess Zhao's commands because in the Battle Alliance, the person with the most power was not the guild leader, not the young master but this princess. It was ultimately because both guild master and young master adored this princess. Almost everything she said went, as they didn't want to wrong her. And so, the 2 men who were legendary figures went to be Princess Zhao's personal movers while the others could only crowd around her beloved car. They guarded it closely, not even allowing a fly to get close. As she was about to turn around, she caught a glimpse of 2 people walking together hand in hand up ahead. Something about them felt familiar to her but she couldn't recall where the feeling came from. Quickly, the back of these 2 people disappeared into the distance. Not thinking any more about it, she began her shopping day. She did all the shopping for Heart's Dream. After buying things, Ling Chen and Shui Ruo came straight to this place. This was their favorite and most visited spot. Every time they came here, their mood would become lightened. They looked afar, at the horizon of an endless green field. A place without the noises of the busy city. Walking on the soft land, the feeling of a fresh breeze came upon them. They walked and walked until Shui Ruo became tired. Ling Chen then sat on the ground with Shui Ruo on his knees, so her clothes didn't become dirty. "This time we walked for so long until we reached a place we've never been before," Shui Ruo smiled. She could still remember the last time. It was the first time she came here after she recovered. She didn't have to lean on her big brother and walked about 500 meters by herself. Although a bit tired, she was really happy. And this time, she walked much further than she ever did before. She really had fully recovered, even if she was still weaker than the others physically. Ling Chen looked towards the distance. "In the future, if you'd like, we can walk to anywhere. When I finish the promise with Yunfeng, we can leave Beijing and go to anywhere you want." He thought to himself at the same time, in the next 10 years we will find the cure to the disease. As the medical world was becoming more and more advanced, 10 years would be more than enough time to find the cure. "Wherever brother goes, I'll follow," Shui Ruo declared, sitting in his arms. She smiled lightly, asking, "Hee, brother, do you think Sister Chi is really pretty? When you first saw her, you looked at her secretly for so long." "Beautiful things always force people to take a couple of looks," Ling Chen smiled. "So, brother likes Sister Chi then?" She blinked her eyes. "Of course not. It was only admiration," Ling Chen shook his head. "If brother has an interest, he should pursue it. Otherwise, Sister Chi might get stolen by other boys. If that time comes you will regret it." I support brother 100%, Shui Ruo said seriously, again with a light smile. Who pushes the person she likes onto other girls? As the conversation continued, Ling Chen felt something in the air. This was the feeling of danger around them. Ling Chen scanned the area quickly. It was a broad field, and other than the occasional birds and insects, no one else could be seen. At last, Ling Chen looked upward and saw something extremely small. So small that it was almost invisible to the naked eye. It was a black dot that was gradually becoming bigger. Around him he could also hear a sound closing in on them. Brother? What's wrong? Shui Ruo sensed his uneasiness and asked nervously. Close your eyes, cover your ears. Ling Chen yelled without explanation. Then he picked her up and ran forward as fast as he could. The sound from the meteor falling above grew louder and louder until it was almost deafening to the ear. As Ling Chen ran with all his might, the air behind him became scorching. At this moment, Ling Chen jumped and lunged forward onto the ground. He held Shui Ruo and covered her body with his. This is definitely a meteor, Ling Chen thought to himself. Boom! The huge sound was as terrifying as a landslide or tsunami. Because Ling Chen was protecting Shui Ruo with his arms, he was not able to cover his ears. The sound caused him temporary deafness, where the whole world seemed to be roaring. The ground also shook aggressively and the heat behind him was almost burning him alive. At least the impact didn't affect their bodies, which meant that they were outside of the meteor's range of impact. The temperature of the air was initially unbearable, but it quickly cooled down and Ling Chen was relieved that they were lucky to make it out alive. However, he stayed down and continued to protect Shui Ruo because the high density and energy matter in the meteor could create a second explosion stimulated by the high heat as it hit the ground. A noise came from the sky. It must have been the sound of the meteor pieces flying around. After such a big impact, it was normal for meteor pieces to be flying around. A few landed on Ling Chen's back, but while none were big enough to cause damage, they were still hot enough to cause pain to him. After a while, everything calmed down and Ling Chen regained his hearing. Ruo, are you okay? He asked. I'm fine. What just happened, brother? Shui Ruo said. She remained covering her ears but was otherwise perfectly fine due to being under Ling Chen's protection. It was a meteor. The gods were probably jealous of you and I, and so they threw a giant rock down to play with us, Ling Chen said, chuckling. He picked himself up, his back covered with sweat. Although the danger had passed, he was still fearful. This attack from Mother Nature, no, mere humans were not capable of detecting and dealing with a meteor. If he hadn't discovered it early, both Shui Ruo and himself would have died right there. That would have been too tragic. He picked up Shui Ruo as well as the bag she held on to before. This bag contained the things they had bought from shopping. Shui Ruo cleared the dust on her and said, surprised, meteor. Look, brother. Shui Ruo pointed toward the meteor behind Ling Chen. He turned around and the sight was as expected. An endless hole had appeared on the land in front, with heavy white smoke everywhere. Around were pieces of big and small meteor fragments and each piece had smoke coming from them. He walked towards the big hole. It was 10 to 20 meters in diameter and 5 to 6 meters deep. To Ling Chen's surprise, there was no meteor in the big hole but rather only a couple pieces of fragments. Did the meteor explode before crashing into the ground? He looked around and saw a lot of fragments, confirming his theory. That was terrifying, Shui Ruo said, patting her chest for comfort. Before she was confused, but now she felt terrified. If it weren't for Ling Chen's extraordinary reaction skills, the results would be unthinkable. These things only happen in legends and stories. This is something we would normally never encounter. I'm not sure if we're lucky or unlucky, Ling Chen said and held on to Shui Ruo's hands. The sound from the big explosion must have traveled for a long distance. There will probably be people here in a short while. We should go back first and try on our new clothes. Now that their clothes were dirty, there was no choice but to change. It probably wouldn't take long before the meteor got on the news. They walked for a short while until Ling Chen stepped on a small meteor fragment and heard it emit a weird sound. Ling Chen stopped in his tracks and picked it up because of his curiosity. It was still hot but not unbearably so. It was rare to find a meteor from the universe on Earth, and he had only intended to have a look at it, but the feel of the rock took him by surprise. Metal? If this was metal, then why did it explode when it landed? He turned it around and saw that the other side of the fragment was glass. Glass? Or some kind of transparent natural substance? This glassy material was clearly a residue left from the fragment. But upon closer observation, apart from the side that was shattered, the top was perfectly flat and parallel, just like refined glass in everyday life. Ling Chen flicked the glass hard, which caused his fingers to hurt slightly, but the glass was perfectly fine. If it was normal glass from Earth, or even tempered glass, he was confident that he would have been able to shatter it easily. "Brother, did you find something?" Shui Ruo asked curiously as she saw him puzzled and intrigued by the piece of meteor. Things from outer space cannot be interpreted by common sense. "Whatever, let's just leave it for them scientists to examine it," Ling Chen said, throwing the piece away. These things from outer space might be elements that are not found on Earth, but it didn't spark his interest enough for him to take a few pieces for keeps. He felt the need to look at the Chinese calendar when he returned home. TLN, probably to see if today was an auspicious day or something. Meteor pieces were everywhere on the ground, some big some small. There were less and less pieces as they walked, clearly a result of the meteor explosion. After walking for a while, they stopped in their tracks because of something. "Brother, look, there's a person there. I think it's a girl." In front of them was a person lying on their back. She was small in stature, dressed fully in black with white laces on the side of her skirt. Under the skirt were thin legs, almost like tender bamboo shoots in spring. She had a small body, small neck, small arms, small waist and short hair. Looking at her closely, she was obviously still a little girl. In front of the girl was a decent-sized piece of meteor. Ling Chen was surprised as he remembered scanning the area and seeing no one. How was it possible for a little girl to be here? Maybe she appeared when Ling Chen ducked down to avoid the meteor and was hit by a meteor fragment. She seemed to be unconscious. "I think she was hit by the meteor." "Brother, let's go have a look," Shui Ruo said worriedly upon seeing the unconscious girl. She dragged Ling Chen with her. Little girl, wake up," Shui Ruo said, gently shaking the girl. Looking closer at her, she seemed to be around 10 years old and was really cute. She had a tender and perfect face, without any hint of imperfection. Ling Chen crouched next to her, confused. Theoretically, if she was unconscious from being hit by the meteor fragment, it was only reasonable that it had hit her head. However, there was not a scratch on the little girl's forehead. Maybe the back of her head? But if that was so, she should be lying face first on the ground and not like how she was now. More importantly, however, was that the girl was breathing normally, so her injury was probably not life-threatening. Ling Chen was relieved, and he said comfortingly to Shui Ruo, "Don't worry, she should be fine, probably just slightly traumatized from the scare." "Okay, maybe we should send her to the hospital. Or should we find her parents first? Is there a phone on her?" Shui Ruo asked calmly. Shui Ruo searched her pockets but couldn't find anything. She looked at the girl for a short while and said, "Brother, look at this little girl, she's so cute. If only I had a cute little sister like her." "Ruo was much cuter when you were little," Ling Chen chuckled. "Brother, look, she's awake." Shui Ruo exclaimed happily. Normally, when you wake up from being unconscious, there was a short period of confusion and haziness. But the little girl just stood up as soon as she was awake. A pair of glistening eyes stared directly at them. The way she was looking at them was very weird and Ling Chen did not understand what it meant. "Little girl, you're awake. You were unconscious before, do you feel any discomfort?" Shui Ruo asked her. The little girl ignored her and looked at the area around them. She looked slightly confused and worried but also excited. Ling Chen could not figure her out. Then the girl said to them, "So this is Earth?" Shui Ruo. Ling Chen. This was such a good question.